Well, we are back, huh? We're back at the 9 Club, everybody. Let me tell you something. Today, we got a special guest. Mr. Andy Howell is with us.
Welcome to the show.
What's up?
Thank you.
How are you, bro?
Good, man.
Hey, thanks.
Great to be here.
Great to have you here. Listen, how's everything?
Life's good.
Should we break a record today?
Yeah. You got enough time?
Sure.
Should we break Valerie's episode? Should we just go for 7 or 8 hours?
Keep me some of this peppermint tea. I'll be able to go for a while.
There you go. Hey, how's life, bro? You live in Calabasas.
I do.
Now. Yeah. How's it over there? You just survived, you just went through all the fires that happened recently,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Went through, I'd say it's my second fire, really.
Second fire.
The year before was my first fire. And, I mean, having lived in Malibu, I think we got our place in 2010 on Las Flores. So we were there for a few years, and then we moved out to Calabasas.
Yeah.
And I kind of heard from everybody, it's going to burn. Like you don't know when, but at some point it's going to burn.
Sure.
So you just get ready for it. And like my next door neighbor has horses and everything. She's got like 20 horses or something over there. And she's just like, it happens. It's going to happen. And she was just so mellow about it. And I was just thinking like, man, it can't be that bad.
Get insurance.
A couple of years ago, it burned into the canyon right next to mine, which was about probably like a little over a mile away or something.
It's still a mile is close.
Like
when you're talking about fires,
Yeah.
that's nothing.
Exactly. I mean, you look at it on the map overhead and you got the bird's eye view of the map and you're like, oh, it's not that, it's pretty far away. But when you get on a road and you drive that 1 mile, it's like, shit, this is super close.
And if it's windy, that mile will go fast.
Yeah. So that I drove out of my driveway and to check, I told my wife I'm going to go check and see how close this fire really is because, we also don't have great reception out there. So it's like we're sort of cut off when things like that happen.
You need like a satellite phone.
Yeah, we need something like that, a bat phone. But I came out of the driveway and the fire trucks were right there next to my driveway filling up at the hydrant.
Okay, yeah.
And those guys are amazing, support your local fire department.
100%.
I brought my sweatshirt because
There you go.
Oh, sick.
I've now learned you've got to support your local fire department.
They work hard.
It was amazing, the
Yeah.
experience that I had with those guys this year. But last year when they, I walked down, they're like, no problem, man. It's just right around the corner, but like we got it. We got this. Don't even worry about it. You can go back home. We're not evacuating.
Yeah, when
So
they're
I kind
calm, it makes you calm. You know? That's cool.
If they're panicking,
Yeah.
run.
But they're like superheroes. They literally are never, upset. It's crazy. I see them the next year, obviously it hit. So I walked away thinking, no big deal.
Sure.
Like I got this, fire's no big deal. And then this next year hit and it started creeping down from, the the north side of the 101.
Yep.
And it started kind of marching down and people who I talked to in retrospect were like, I knew it was going to go all the way to the water even back then. I had no idea. I thought, it's going to burn way off there in the east, out in, the valley somewhere, and then we'll never see it.
Right.
And then a couple hours later, it was in Calabasas.
Yeah.
And had jumped the highway and was burning a hotel like down the street from our house. And they hadn't even evacuated everybody yet. It was just like people were starting to leave. And so I was like, I went outside and it was super smoky and I told my wife, like, stay inside for a little bit. Let me start packing the car up. And pulled her car, my car, kind of backed it up so I could open the backs and just start piling stuff in there. And literally for about 1 hour straight, I was running through my house, like grabbing, paintings and photos and it was somehow the art. Like my kids were the most important and my wife.
Get out of the way, kids. Scram. I gotta.
Somehow, the art took precedence in a way, I was literally playing Tetris in the car to pack all the way to the very inside of the top of the car, packed with art and stuff like that. Because I would walk by it, right across from the door of my office. I have Ed Templeton's first painting.
Okay.
And I walk by that all the time, every day. And I was running back and forth by it, and I was seeing it out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, I can't leave that painting.
Right.
So
Mental note. Yeah.
I grabbed it and stuffed that in between, some other stuff, and It's like I've been collecting art for probably 35 years now or something, and from all the way back to the first time meeting Keith Haring, and he drew a little picture for me to like skate stuff, to graffiti guys, to Futura, to, like just killer stuff, and I had to like stuff that, and Shepard's an old buddy of mine, so I have some of his stuff, and I was like throwing these things in there, just crying at the same time. And then we just, I got everybody in the car, and my wife packed up like photos and some of that stuff, and then we just drove over the hill and went over by UCLA and just camped out there for the day. And in 2 hours of getting to that area and sort of getting situated and getting into a hotel, in that time the thing had creeped almost to the beach in Malibu, and it was just ripping through the canyons.
Those winds, man. The winds just
amazing
carried it.
It's crazy.
But your house was okay.
Our house was okay.
That's great.
But we were on edge for about 5 days while we sat over on this side
and wondered
what was going to happen when the perimeter wrapped itself around our little nook where our house is. Like it was less than a half a mile from us. And we just kind of, we were at that moment, we were like, hey, we're selling our house. If it makes it through, we're out. We can't live through this again. We're gonna move. I always had a dream to have a place in Costa Rica and surf like the longest right hand point in the world. And so I was like, we're getting a place in Costa Rica. That's it. She's kind of fought me on it because it's too hot down there. But she's like, yeah, we got to go. And she grew up in Germany, so we have her mom lives in northern Germany. Okay. And so we were thinking about having a place in Germany and a place in Costa Rica and just splitting our time. Like somehow having the kids be educated, like at home school or something. I don't even know what, international schools.
Right.
How old are your kids?
My daughter's 9 and my son is 11.
But you're still there though. You're still in Calabasas.
We are.
You haven't moved.
Yeah, somehow. Like the magic of, this is the magic of Malibu in Calabasas area, and you'd know from being over in that way.
Exactly.
After the fire stops and the rains come, everything blooms like 10 times brighter than it was the year before. And somehow our minds were like brainwashed and erased. And we were like, we didn't just almost burn. We didn't just almost lose everything.
It's such a beautiful place.
It's just like we're staying. It's such a great place. So now we've doubled down and like done some protection paint for the house.
Sure. You got to clear the brush,
all that stuff, and we're just like, okay, now and I think we're learning that now the fire is going to come, and you just have to be.
You got to be prepared. Well, listen, I'm glad you made it out of there. I'm glad you're still there.
That was the trip.
But let's talk about some skate shit. Let's talk about skating, art. Let's talk about Andy Howell.
Okay.
Grew up in Virginia Beach, correct?
Yep. Virginia Beach, Virginia.
You looked at me like I was like you.
I just thought like I'm going to interrupt this guy while he's starting the first question, and then I caught myself and I'm like, that's not cool. But I do want to interrupt you. Can I? Do you mind?
No.
Virginia Beach is like, yeah, I'm from Virginia Beach and I want to talk about Virginia Beach. But,
okay. Please.
Can I give you guys some shit first? Sure.
Oh wow!
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to it.
Cool. Let's go.
So. First, here's some
nice New Deal T-shirt here, 30th anniversary, New Deal.
Yeah,
30 years ago.
Don't remind me, it's been 30 years, but yeah, this is I'm super excited about this. Me and Paul Schmitt and Steve Douglas have reunited, and it's great. It's cool. So.
Team
shirts. Jammy. These are team shirts. What? You guys are our first honorary team members here. So.
Wow.
There you go. Oh, so you got one more.
I got a bunch.
You got a bunch? Oh.
But okay, I don't know who's got what sizes.
I'm a large.
I think we're all larges.
We would have all worn double XL back in the day, so that's what I brought you guys.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I
would have pulled out my...
I got large.
We're all larges, yep.
Thank you, bro.
Okay, so I may have one XL or two XLs and two larges.
That's right.
But whoever doesn't take a large, I can get you one.
No, this is perfect.
Or you can just be like it was in the 90s and have everything draped off you, like
trust me,
OG style.
Listen, it doesn't matter. I'm going to eBay this. It doesn't matter.
All right. Well, hold on to it for a few minutes. Let's create a little bit.
Have him sign it first, Chris.
Oh yeah, we'll have you sign
it.
Yeah. You don't sign shit.
No, I don't sign shit.
Well, listen. Oh, now you're pulling out a book. What's it?
This is a book called Art, Skateboarding, and Life
yeah,
that
yeah.
I put out in 2005 with Ginkgo Press.
And you wrote the book.
I
There's
co-wrote
dozens.
it.
There's dozens of interviews.
Yeah,
in
probably
here,
40
right?
plus people in that. But flip
Wow.
to the second part, and then
Do you have it thumbnailed?
No, thumbnails. That's all.
Okay. Here we
I just
go.
drew this for you guys.
Oh wow.
Oh, this is a.
Oh, sick,
Oh,
dude.
look, the 9 Club in the New Deal font.
Wow.
That's so rad.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be here, man.
Hey,
It's really cool that you guys are chronicling, this part of culture in a way that now with these tools you have, people can hear the whole story, and so
Right.
it's
I'll
great.
just Show the camera here because people are just holding it to ourselves.
Yeah.
But the people watching.
Yeah, don't show anybody.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. That's
Dude, that's-
yeah.
How long did it take you to doodle this? How
I
long?
think that's probably like an hour,
That's-
maybe 45
That would
minutes.
take me 5 days, and I would have
A
to
lifetime.
trace. I would have to trace it.
Yeah.
That's how. But let's-
I'll draw something while we're here if you have a Sharpie too while we're
Oh.
talking.
Oh, yeah.
Can you do that? Can
Yeah.
you multitask?
Kind of, yeah.
Oh,
I can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or,
Should I grab one for him?
please,
Yeah,
grab
right.
him a
You got
Sharpie.
you got a Sharpie and another.
I think the only other time we did something on the show was we wrote a song with Ben Harper. Ben Harper was on the show. We wrote a song with him.
he's amazing.
That was the
Yeah.
only time we busted out Sharpies and paper.
I probably should have seen that, but I haven't. But what's the song about?
About the 9 Club and my cat Larry and just
Awesome.
different shit. We each wrote a verse, basically.
Sick.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great dude. Talented.
All right.
Let's
well,
talk
that,
about-
that would pale in comparison to
Well,
anything Ben Harper might do.
Since
He's
we're
amazing.
on the topic of New Deal, we'll go back to Virginia and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but let's
cool.
talk about New Deal.
Yeah, cool. Let's do that.
30 years, New Deal.
Yeah.
I reminded you.
Yeah, you
Just
reminded
to-
me
just-
again.
You
Don't,
told me
don't
not
remind
to,
me.
but
It's a cue to remind me.
why did you guys want to bring back New Deal? I mean, it is the 30 years, but why? Explain, why.
It really started with Douglas. Douglas calling me and reminding me, hey, mate, it's 30 years. You got it's coming up. And
Time flies.
say the same thing to him. Don't remind me.
Right,
But
right.
I think what happened with New Deal in the 90s was something that's happening now
Okay,
in skating.
yeah.
I think we're seeing this resurgence of all these cool new brands, small brands that are sort of able to be generated by a few people in a room somewhere, which is basically what we did with New Deal
Mm-hmm.
at a time when, we were sort of defecting from Vision, via Schmitt Stix and all that.
Sure.
At a time when there were Big Five, they were old dudes that probably weren't skating much anymore,
Right,
or hadn't skated or something. So it's I think at that time we sort of ushered in some new thinking around skating. We were focused on skating everything, pools and ramps
And how old were you
street
at this
and everything.
point in time?
1990. I was born in '68, so you guys do the math. I
Kelly?
think
Kelly? I'm not.
22?
I'd have to
Yeah.
break out of abacus and all
Some-
that. I
I
don't
would
know.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I
yeah.
have an iPhone
I should know this
calculator.
stuff seriously.
Yeah. 22 years old. Okay.
22, yeah. So I think I had skated for Schmitt Stix for a couple years, 2 or 3 years
Gotcha.
before that.
And you turned pro
we
for
were
Schmitt
we were
Stix.
feeling no, I didn't turn pro for Schmitt
No.
Stix. We're getting away from New Deal, but I'll tell you about turning pro.
Okay.
Because I think that's kind of an interesting story, and then
Yeah.
I think you're just going to weave and backtrack and stuff. But
Sure, we'll tie it all together.
yeah, I was unsponsored when I turned pro, and that might be
What?
novel for skateboarding. I'm not sure, but I was completely not sponsored. I think I was sponsored by Indy at the time, who had sent me trucks,
Okay.
and 17th Street Surf Shop, which was the local surf shop in Virginia Beach where I grew up. So
How did you
I was
turn-
living out in Atlanta. I was in art school. I was somewhat at a turning point or a crossroads in my skateboarding where I felt like I was good enough to be pro.
Okay.
But I wasn't currently sponsored. I had been sponsored by Santa Cruz, and by some strange twist, those guys stopped sending me stuff. Even though I was the top street skater, probably am on their team at the time.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
and so I spent a year or two not being sponsored and just being in art school and partying and hanging and doing graffiti and music and stuff like that, and kind of thinking maybe skateboarding's done and I'm gonna do art now, And but I sort of had the wild hair of that kind of bug in the back of my head that was like, if you don't do this shit, you're a punk. You know, you got it. You have to do it. And so the first Savannah Slamma was coming up.
Okay.
And I knew Gons and Nodis and, you know, Tony and Tommy Guerrero were buddies kind of at that point. I mean, I knew those guys. And I think to some extent I was known as like this am kid from the East Coast who was pretty good, but, you know, you never hear from him type of thing. And I was reaching out to Stacy actually to skate for Powell because I was friends with, you know, really good friends with Tommy. And I just thought like that would be cool to skate for Powell.
Okay.
And, or something in that range. I was talking to those guys. And I went to Savannah Slamma and went out on the floor and started skating and like kind of, you know, knew enough people where there wasn't any vibes about me sort of sneaking out onto the practice floor of the pro contest with a beat up old board, you know, just looking like a ghetto punk, like coming out there skating, you know. But I had a bunch of tricks that I think people hadn't really seen before, you know. And so I was out there at the same time as like Neil and Gons and Tony and, you know, a few people were kind of tooling around, getting their lines together and stuff like that. And there was a little mini like quarter pipe up to a wall. And I said, okay, I'm just going to use that sort of like, I'm skating in a pool or a vert ramp or something. And I had been playing around with what I called nose ollies at the time. So I've been playing around, I think this was 80, what was this, 88? I don't know. But I've been playing around with like riding up the wall and then popping my nose off the wall and then landing fakie kind of or backwards down into a ramp.
Gotcha.
You know? At little places around Atlanta and stuff where I was living at the time. And so I started doing that. And then I was doing little front side airs and going back in and airs to fakie and just going a little higher till I was up probably like 3 or 4 feet above the ramp on the wall. And most of the guys were doing the long sloping wall ride and pop off on the floor.
Sure.
And I can remember so clearly Neil skating. There was a tight transition to a quarter pipe with a big curb block on top of it. And that was like, you know, his domain. So he just was going up and doing these really cool like axle stalls and then kind of going down to fakie and just smoothly like doing his Neil style.
Okay.
And he goes, Tony, like come check out this thing Andy's doing over here. And so Tony kind of cruised over there. And at one point it was kind of, you know, while they weren't practicing their big pro skating runs, we were sessioning this little thing. And it was just, you know, really cool for me. I was kind of at that moment like, yeah, I could probably skate pro. Maybe I'm going to do it. And Stacy came up to me and said, Andy, like, you going to skate this contest? You know, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I got this busted board. And in the back of my mind, I was kind of imagining this fantasy that maybe he was going to say, well, why don't you skate for Powell?
Yeah, I'll give
you this board, you know, brand new board that you can ride in the contest. And I sort of, you know, waited for that.
Didn't happen.
And it didn't happen. And that night, I went out partying. I had all my homies from Atlanta there, you know. It's a little drive, you know, to Savannah. And we were just out skating and partying and ran into Neil and ran into different people skating around the streets of this really old, like, it's almost like a ghost town. If you've ever seen, you know, any footage of the town of Savannah, it's a beautiful old town. And it had some skatable stuff. And I went and skated a handrail and this different stuff and then just ended up partying like crazy with my friends that night and saying, yeah, whatever, it wasn't meant to happen.
Okay. Years
later, I became, you know, really good friends with Steve Size. I'm saying 10 years later-ish. And he was like, you remember that Savannah Slamma contest? Stacy had told me that night to go out and find you and skate with you to see if we wanted to put you on Powell. And I was supposed to give him the feedback of whether or not you were going to get on Powell or not.
No way.
I'm like, dude, you've never fucking told me that. Like, what the fuck? Where were you? You know, I was partying with the, you know, over
Did
there.
you know him? You knew him back then or no?
I mean, I think knew, like, hey, what's up? We'd skated in contests as AMs together type of thing, but like not, you know, buddies. So because I was an East Coast guy and, you know, the guys I knew really were San Francisco and New York at that time. They were the guys that I kind of hung out with in skating.
So he didn't check the bar.
He didn't check the bar. He never even found me.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't even know if I was still skating at that, you know, wee hour of the morning. He was supposed to find me or something. But he said he actually skated around Savannah looking for me. Heard I was skating that U curb where Blender was and, you know, this different stuff. And I was like, yeah, well, good thing you never found me, right?
I mean, you didn't go back and skate the contest, or was the contest was done?
That was the day before the
Practice.
contest, so the night before, and I guess the good skaters that were responsible were probably inside sleeping, getting ready for the contest, but we were just out, kind of raging, and I didn't end up skating the contest.
No.
So I went back all dejected, like I didn't get asked to to get sponsored, and didn't know about the size thing. Mm-hmm. And my friends were kind of saying like, dude, you should have busted. Like, we were watching you skate. You were totally just pulling, shit that nobody was doing.
Right.
And I went back home, and I just went through like a crazy depression for a little while. And I was just like, fuck it, skating's done. I'm not going to skate.
Huh.
And then I woke up, one of those like wake up at 3:00 in the morning with just the alarm in my eyes of, oh my God, I got to do something or else it's never going to happen.
Okay.
And being, is anybody's from the East Coast? Boston? Who said Boston?
Boston, Raj.
Roger, yeah.
The feeling of not knowing what was going on in California ever, except for the little blips of a magazine that came out every once in a while or whatever, or a video from a contest, was really a trip because it was out of sight, out of mind. It didn't exist if you didn't focus on doing it every day,
Yeah.
So I kind of fell off, and I was just, like I said, doing graffiti and, stuff like that. I was painting, and I was going out at night and painting and, going to clubs and stuff. It was like kind of, sowing my wild oats in some way.
Okay.
And I ended up saying, waking up at 3 a.m. and saying like, I got to do something. So I called my friend Blake, who I'd known since I was a kid, who lived in Huntington Beach. I said, I'm going to fly myself out to California for this next contest.
Oh.
Will you drive me to the contest? Because I don't have any way to get there. He's like, sure. He had an old Volkswagen Bug that I didn't think was going to ever make it from, Huntington Beach to, it was Carson Velodrome, the Carson contest that was in the crazy bank thing.
It's a good hour plus drive. Yeah.
It made it. But I was literally, this was, some months later, so that might have been the next contest in that year or whatever it was. And I went up and, got there with I was riding a Lucero street thing because it really was the only street board at that time, And so I cruised up to the place and kind of like, here's my entry fee money. My name's Andy Howell. I want to turn pro. I want to skate in this contest.
You turned yourself pro.
I turned myself pro.
Right.
How crazy is that? Yeah. And so.
Did anyone say anything to you? Like you? Can't...
Nobody said anything. I knew most of the people.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm pretty sure Valley was pro. I can't even say. I used to call him Mike Valley back in the day because we didn't even. I didn't even know how to spell his name. But Valley or Valelli, or however you say it. I think he was pro already. Okay. And I knew, like I said, the big guys, and they were there, and they were sort of, I knew Christian, I knew these guys. It's always kind of, it was like, okay, yeah, whatever, man. Like, yeah, you should have turned, kind of like, maybe you should have turned pro or something,
Gotcha.
Anyway, that's what I told myself, I don't know if that was the case. But I got up. The velodrome was this odd place that was like, velodrome is a Olympic cycling thing with these like 20-foot high banked walls, right? Like for Christian, that was just like a dream. He's like, okay, I'll start with lots of speed.
Right.
But for me, being like more of a street skate kid, I stood up there and there was a curb at the top. I put my feet on the board, my back foot on the board, and already that street thing was a tiny little board. And I looked down at it and it literally looked like a freaking toothpick. I couldn't see. First off, everything went like tunnel vision. And I looked down and I was like, it was like a cartoon. Like I was putting my little foot on that board. And then I want to say it was like not KT, but either KT or Dave Duncan or whoever was the guy, the voice of the contest at the time. Okay, next up, skating coming from Virginia Beach, Virginia, and he doesn't have a sponsor, skating for 17th Street Surf Shop, Andy Howell? With like a question mark or something at the end of it. That's the way I remembered it.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, fuck. What am I going to do? And I stood up on the board and I looked down and I said, just get me across this thing down there to that little wall with a little ramp to the wall over there because I was thinking about the same thing I had been doing at Savannah Slamma.
The nose ollie.
And I made it over to that wall, and I did I rode up the wall, and then I sort of landed on top of the wall and did like a slider across they had a 4x8 sheet of plywood on its side, and I slid off this thing and landed. And made this trick that I guess nobody had seen at the time, you know?
Gotcha.
And as I remember it, I have, maybe some issues with memory too, but Nadas and Tommy were there at the bottom of the thing, when I landed, and we're sort of like, yo, and I was like, that's it. I'm fucking pro. Right. Because at that moment, it didn't matter what happened. Like, those guys had sort of said, yes,
you're one of us.
You did it. You're one of us.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh shit, So that was my experience. It was the scariest thing ever.
That's
turning pro was the scariest thing.
Well, you turned yourself pro at a big contest.
Yeah, it was a trip. And then I was riding I knew Jim Muir too, and he kind of was talking to me about Dogtown and stuff, and I loved Dogtown at the time. I mean, just the style of the guys that were on there and the way they skated, and I was totally stoked. But it wasn't me. It wasn't really the way I skated, and it wasn't what I was kind of about. So I was just kind of hanging out, and I remember seeing Ray Barbie there for the first time. I think he was an AM, and he was flipping his board around and stuff and doing the no complies, and I was like, oh shit, here's somebody who's gonna push things forward, which he did. But Schmitt came up to me, and he's like, hey man, I see you're riding a street thing, what do you like? I'm like, dude, it's the only street board out right now. It's great. It's the only one that has a nose that I can do the tricks that I want to do off of, And he's like, you want to skate for Schmitt Stix? And I was like, dude, I'd love to skate for Schmitt Stix. And I didn't know Paul really. I mean, I knew him because I had been to the Mess Series vert contest way back in the day. I mean, he's OG from Florida. Sure. So we would run into each other. I was in Virginia Beach, a few states away, and we'd run into each other from time to time. And so I was like, yeah, this guy's an East Coast guy. And I was hardcore East Coast at that time. I just hadn't had, besides San Francisco, really any good experiences out here. Okay. And so I said, yeah, man, you don't even have to pay me or anything. You can just, give me boards and stuff. And he's like, you don't have to give me a model. I don't know what I was thinking because I just really didn't get it at that time. But I just said, and he goes, no, we would give you a model and we would, pay you for it and stuff like that. And I was like, cool, that's even better. So I went home and, there wasn't any immediate gratification like there is on social media now. Right, so I went home and my friends were like, dude, what happened? Did you eat shit or was it good? I was like, I think it was good. And
hey, you turned pro.
Hey, you turned, yeah.
And then
turned pro twice.
And then I think I was Thrasher and Transworld ran pictures of that. Grant took a picture of it, and maybe Kevin Thatcher or something. Both ran pictures of that, and then, so it was sort of it was okay that you turned pro without having a sponsor.
Now, was anybody else doing this? Was anybody else just entering themselves in a contest back then and just turning them?
I can't say for sure, but I don't know if anybody ever did that.
Tony checked the box.
I think Tony Hawk.
Tony Hawk, maybe. Yeah. Okay.
We were the same age. We're exactly the same age. And when I was a kid, I grew up in Virginia Beach, and there was only vert skating. But for some reason, the local government made skateboarding itself illegal.
Couldn't do it anywhere in public.
Anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, not even a backyard ramp?
It started as in public, and then it got to the point as also backyard ramps are illegal. And so we will come tell you to tear your backyard ramp down. Somehow this huge scene grew out of Virginia Beach. But we had a little ramp in my friend's backyard. We were kids we were sort of latchkey kids. My mom was a teacher, my dad was a dentist, so I was come home from school and I'd be on my own until the streetlights came on. When the streetlights came on, you got to be home.
Time for dinner.
So get your ass home. But we would go out right when it started to get dark before the streetlights came on, and we would go. There were a lot of houses being built in our area, so let's just say we pilfered a lot of wood during that time. I mean, major amounts of wood.
Maybe
to
that's
build
why they
ramps.
outlawed skating. All the wood was going missing.
But we didn't understand. We didn't get that part of it at the
Right.
time. We were just like, it was a thrill of, can we pile 20 sheets of plywood on a skateboard and you sit on it, I'll push you, and then we'll roll through the neighborhood back to your yard where we'll then offload it into your yard.
Yeah.
And then next day when we come home from school, we'll start building the transitions, you know? And so we did that a lot there for about probably 3 years, I'd say. But we had a ramp in my buddy Ron's backyard, and I remember the first promo video came out for Powell where Tony was just like little, bony Tony was doing like a finger flip in a pool and maybe a varial or something like that. And it was just, I was a skinny kid that felt like that. And so I was just like, I'm going to skate just like that guy. I'm going to get the same board, the same wheels, the same lapper, the same trucks, the same, everything. And I did. And so sort of tried to pattern myself after him, not well, but I started vert skating and really pushing to be good at vert skating. That's originally what I got
That's what you
sponsored
did,
for.
right?
That's right.
You eventually hurt yourself, though.
I did, yeah. At the time I was making skate zines too, because I saw a picture of GSD, Gary Skate Davis, doing a boneless, like a vert sort of a trick, but in this place called the Shell Bowl, which was basically like the end of a ditch somewhere.
Okay.
And it was a sequence, and I was like, that's the sickest thing. Like, I started to play with that, and I even drew it, the sequence, and I got my mom to get me a screen print kit, and I screen printed my own T-shirts of this sequence of Gary Davis.
Oh, interesting.
And made it part of this skate zine I was making at the time called Sick Nature.
Oh.
SIC Nature. Yeah. It was like punk days at that time.
How old were you at this point?
14, maybe.
Oh, so you've been doing art like your whole life.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up loving art.
Okay.
I think art first and foremost of anything in my life.
That was what you were.
And then beyond that, at first some sports in school, but then skateboarding, surfing. I started surfing before I started skating, actually. Yeah.
And what were you just giving this zine to your buddies, or?
I think it was a way to communicate with people.
Okay.
Because there were little scenes developing with like a backyard ramp in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and somewhere in New Jersey, and somewhere in Tennessee, and Atlanta had like the Rancheros and Tommy K and those guys, and there were these scenes that were developing, but there was really no way to contact the people. You didn't call them up and go, "Hey, man, like what's going on in your scene today?"
Right, you didn't DM
So we would
them.
sort of publish our own little zines with the story of what happened, and we'd have somebody with an Instamatic camera take like a picture of somebody on the ramp, and then we'd write a story and do an interview of a little kid coming up that we thought was really good, and that kind of stuff. And so I was screen printing these, in my bedroom after school. If I couldn't skate, I would screen print T-shirts and buy a pack of Hanes T-shirts and print them and like sell a couple and keep one.
There you go, little hustler.
So it was early entrepreneurial, type of things.
Sick
for
Nation
sure.
coming up.
I know,
Sick Nature
right?
was coming up, yeah. And during the time we started to complain to the city about skateboarding being illegal, and we're like, what the fuck? Like,
Because there was a scene there.
it was starting to be a scene, yeah. And we complained to the city, and we said, if you're, not making bicycles illegal, like you can't make skateboards illegal. If you're going to do
Roller
this,
skates.
you've got to make something that we can skate. We need a place to skate.
Yeah.
This is a thing. This is an actual thing.
Yeah.
And skating wasn't at all like it is today, obviously, but it was very counterculture. My mom, and I don't think she ever even saw me skate in a contest ever. I probably skated in like 40 some
Never saw you.
contests.
Never went to a contest.
I don't think so.
Huh.
She just didn't register it as anything that was important at all.
Yeah.
It was just like,
Right.
you just get good grades in school and,
Go
do
play.
your thing. Or you're just playing around. Like, it's like a dirt clog fight.
Were
but
you
you're on a
getting
skateboard.
parents involved with the trying to get it legalized in the city too?
I think John Fidella, who's one of the guys that really like pushed skateboarding, and the Gutierrez brothers in Virginia Beach, they, I think, pushed it a lot. They were, I don't know, somehow somebody was connected with somebody's mom or something that could like put together like a real, set of signatures of folks to
Like a petition.
basically to petition the government.
Okay.
And they decided to build Mount Trashmore. There was an old asphalt skate park there, and it's basically a mountain of trash that they had covered up with dirt. And those guys basically kind of designed that ramp, and then it was the first city-funded ramp in the U.S. So after the days of Dogtown and the kind of demise of cement skate parks, when it was just nothing but flat ground and backyard ramps, this was the first one that was funded by a city anywhere.
Wow.
And so instantly there was like some, Thrasher's ears perked up in Transworld. And even though we were this little tiny nowhere town in the middle of the East Coast, people started coming out.
Yeah.
I was always like a house where people stayed. Like my mom was super cool about that.
Okay.
She's like, rather have your friends staying over here than me not seeing you for a weekend or whatever.
True.
So, Tom Graholski and Chuck Treese stayed at my house. Like I was a little, kid, just so stoked to see, Tom Graholski skate. He was a pro skater. He was an amazing vert skater.
What was the age difference?
I'd say they're probably like a few years older.
Okay, so pretty cool.
three to 5, I would say maybe.
Okay.
I'm not sure,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
He just seemed like a big kid, But they sent out a photographer from Thrasher, and I, for the life of me, can't remember this guy's name. He was sort of like a tangential, not that important Thrasher photographer that was like a contributor maybe once in a while, probably took wedding pictures on the side or something. But he happened to live in Del Mar.
Oh, okay.
And so he came out, and as soon as he said Del Mar, and he stayed at my house. My mom said, "Yeah, you can have that guy stay at the house or whatever." It was the first picture I ever had in Thrasher magazine. I think I was 15. He took the picture. Yeah, tuck knee invert at Lynnhaven Ramp. And I heard Del Mar. And of course I thought Tony Hawk. So I said, "Hey man, like if I buy you like 10 rolls of film, will you go take some photos of Tony skating and send them to me? Like that would be super cool. I could put them in my skate zine." Maybe there was 20 of those things photocopied on somebody's dad's photocopier. And he was kind of like, yeah, he's probably feeling guilty because he's staying at my house or something, but he took the rolls of film. And then I didn't hear from him for a couple months.
Okay.
And so I thought, what a punk. He took my film and he didn't take a picture.
You were expecting it back in like a week or
yeah,
something?
I was like, how fast? Maybe 2 weeks or something.
Sure.
But the picture came out in Thrasher, so I was super stoked on that.
Yep.
And then at the same time, I sent Tony a letter. I didn't know how to get in touch with him or anything. I think I may have looked up Powell's address they used to put the address at the bottom of the page.
Don't do that anymore.
No.
I think I found that and like wrote it to him on
Tony Hawk.
line school paper to Tony Hawk. I'm a big fan from Virginia
Dear
Beach.
Tony.
It was like Dear Tony letter, and try to tell him I like his skating, but also ask him some questions because like in the odd chance that this guy would send me back the film, like I would have an interview of Tony Hawk and I'd also have some pictures. So Tony wrote me back and like answered the questions and wrote me a letter and stuff, which I'd never held on to, so I don't have.
Oh, wow.
But the guy sent me the pictures back, and it was Tony trying to learn 540s in Del Mar.
Oh, no way.
And he was spinning and like,
So there were the sequences of the bales.
There were some sick, sequences, but sequences were a big deal back then. That was the only way we saw how a trick was done,
Yeah.
And so he sent me these pictures back, and there were pictures of Lester and a bunch of guys just ripping huge airs out of the keyhole.
Huh.
And I'd never been there. Being an East Coast kid, that was like a dream that I would never imagine that I would ever be able to see that. That was like, heaven, skateboard heaven, Nirvana or something. So I made my zine. I did the thing. I put it out. Years later, I, met Tony at Virginia Beach when he came for the skate contest in Virginia Beach at Trashmore. That was in the Bones Brigade video and all that stuff. And he was like, "Yeah, man, I was wondering when I was going to meet you. How's it going?" I was like behind the ramp type of thing. And then I had a little talk with him there. But then over time, I ended up skating with them in contests, later as I was turned pro. And then after skating, I started doing a lot more creative stuff for other brands and other things. I ended up doing Hawk Shoes, some stuff for him for that.
Oh, wow.
Just different projects along the way. So I just kept running into each other. Like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, the video game, I did a lot of the branding and marketing and stuff for that. For
that's
Activision.
amazing. Yeah.
And so we were just... ran into each other kind of over time.
Sure.
I had an ad agency at the time. This is years later, 15 years later. And I was doing a Keep California Beautiful campaign where my concept was that, the streets were Tony's office, and that's where he worked and that's where he lived. So don't throw your trash in our street. Keep California beautiful.
Sure.
Anyway, we did this little thing and he came down and did it as sort of just a, nice thing to do for the state.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Andy, I never told you, but because we were skating together, it was so lame for me to say this while we were at a contest together,
competing against each other.
Yeah, we're competing against each other, By the way, I'm going to, fuck up your game right now and tell you something that's going to make you feel really small. But he said, you sent me the very first fan letter I ever got.
Wow.
That's insane.
It could only have impacted me then, as a kid, it would have been like, yeah, okay, cool. We're
whatever.
14, no big deal, But it blew me away. I was just like, dude, how impactful you've been on everybody's life in skating. You're just an iconic part of this life.
Yeah.
But that means a lot to me. I'm like, would you, sign me a board or something and send it to me? So he did. He sent me a board with one of his Hawk, skeleton graphics from, I guess, the Birdhouse, and it said, "For Andy, my #1 fan," literally.
That's amazing.
Thanks for everything, Tony Hawk. Because we had done 5 projects together by then.
Yeah. I think I remember this Keep California Clean thing.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was a commercial that was airing, right?
No, it was print. It was all print.
Was it print?
But they might have turned it into a commercial after that, but we didn't.
It sounds very familiar. Keep California Clean.
It was good. Yeah, but he's like an iconic part of my life. I say the first major influence in skating was Tony, for sure.
Well,
even though we're the same age, it's
right.
like he was sort of in the Mecca. And like an example of what it could be like if you skated, and you get sponsored and I don't think he was pro at that time. He might have been, I guess, because in that first promo video, was he still am or was he a pro?
In Bones Brigade Video Show?
Is that what it? No, Bones Brigade Video Show was like a full-length video, right? So they did some sort of little promo that was like a 15 or 10-minute promo that somehow got out, and we had it in Virginia Beach as far as I can remember.
Okay.
And I think it was, this is the way I remember it, he had like a varial, and it was in a pool, but I don't think it was Del Mar. And then I think maybe he had a finger flip, but I know he did the finger flip in the opening of Bones Brigade Video Show, which was insane. Maybe he didn't even do the finger flip in that. Maybe it was just a varial. But Caballero, of course, did the Caballero, which was, his trademark thing at that time. But Stevie also has a huge influence. Stevie, I think, more of an influence as an artist, as a musician. I mean, as a skater, for sure. The iconic, thruster across the channel, a Great Desert Ramp Battle, things that stick in my mind.
Yeah.
But then the faction and more than just riding a board, what his life was like as that. He published his own skate zine called Speed Zine. He, did these things. He was really also influential, but it was more kind of that I related to him because I felt like that. I felt like, I'm a skater, but I'm into punk music. Like I was drawing the covers for my friends' punk bands at that time, and making my skate zine at 15 or whatever. And Stevie was doing the same sort of stuff, making his skate zine. I sent him drawing. It was all skeletons at that time. So it was skeletons skating in pools. I sent him a drawing of a skeleton doing a front side invert boneless on a banked pool that I think it might have said the faction or something on the wall in dripping paint. And I just kind of on a whim sent it to him. He made it a cover of one of his speed zines.
That's amazing.
Which was really cool. I think I was 15 then. So I kind of always had this connection that happened through skating, but it was only because I sort of pushed a little beyond what my buddies were doing at the time, my friends were making zines and stuff too, but I don't know, for some reason I couldn't sit still.
Yeah.
Do you still have these zines?
I don't have that one, but the Skateboard Museum, which a guy named Jürgen Blumen, he's in Germany. He's just a fanatic skateboard collector who basically built an entire museum around skateboarding and a lot of the history of the 80s and 90s. He's got stuff back to the 50s too. Amazing guy, super passionate, kind of like you guys, a purveyor of the history of skating and everything.
It's amazing.
He showed it in a show in LA not too long ago. And it was the original drawing. And, at that time we had scissors, tape, and whiteout. That was your publishing equipment. Right? That was your desktop publishing at that time. So it has, whiteout all over the place and Stevie's handwriting of, the things and stuff. I mean,
Wow. That's great.
magic, dude. It's
Yeah.
like, it was a
crazy.
magic time.
Huh. Is Tony Hawk still your number? Are you still his number one fan?
I don't know. I mean, I am his number one fan, literally. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm a fan of Tony for so many different reasons.
We all are.
Yeah. So I mean,
He's
it would be
amazing.
redundant for me to tell that, but as his first fan, I guess I could do a quick version of it. It's like he went through his ups and downs in popularity in skating, but he always progressed and pushed this whole thing forward.
Mm-hmm.
First on the board, with every kind of trick that could never have been done before that he figured out how to do. And he sort of pushed himself. It's like when he did his 50 for 50 thing recently, it's
That
like,
was incredible.
dude, you are amazing. That you
crazy.
just went back and you actually did create all those things. It's not like you kind of said like, I'm going to do that guy's trick or whatever. It's like, these are his contributions, and he's like, hey, I'm going to do them again for everybody. Amazing. Just amazing and inspiring.
Totally.
But then in video games, the first person to sort of push beyond the boundaries that had been set, by the industry and culture of skating into a whole other place that gave skating a new audience and a new kind of crowd of potential kids that would get involved in it.
Totally. Yeah.
Was huge. And he got paid for that. And that was so awesome. You know, like he was the guy that was supposed to, be that. He was the ambassador. You know?
I think I think even on our show, he said that was his first life-changing check.
Yeah.
From the video game.
Yeah.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, at that time I had started an ad agency. So my trajectory sort of was art school, turned pro for skating, had, a career in skateboarding. And then by 95, I sort of broke myself off and retired from skating professionally and, competitively as it were.
Okay.
And then I said, hey, I'm an artist. I'm a creative person. Now I'm going to start doing creative stuff.
Yeah.
And so ended up doing a little design firm with some buddies of mine. I called up Shepard Fairey, who was someone I had known for a while through skating, and said to him, "Hey man, like I feel like you need to come out here to California." I had moved to San Diego by that time. I was like, I feel like you need to come out here to California. I think it was 95-ish. Because being up there in Providence where you are, it's really hard. You can go down to New York and stuff, but it's really hard to get seen. Even New York at that time was such an insular, small skate scene, and there just wasn't a way to project what was happening in New York. There was great stuff happening there, but you just didn't see it that much. I said, you got to come out here, man.
To Shepard Fairey, you're saying?
Yeah, I was like, you got to come out to California, like if you want to keep going forward type of thing. Because he was sort of like, I don't think stagnating. He's always producing artwork, but he had a little shop that was screen printing. I think he might have had a ramp in his shop or something. And he's a sick skater, by the way.
Yeah, he was
and
good.
And I said, why don't you come out? We'll do like with this thing you're doing, this giant thing. Like we'll do a skateboard type of thing, So he and I put a skateboard out, and he moved out to California, and we started a design firm. Me, Shepard, Dave Kinsey, who's another artist, has been involved in skating off and on for a long time, who was a buddy of mine from Atlanta. So I was friends with Ken and Damon, who were doing drawers at the time, and they were kind of looking at what I was doing with a brand called Sophisto that I had, and Zero Sophisto, and they had, Ken would kind of say to me like, dude, you know some artists, you know some designers? I'm like, I know this guy in Atlanta who's super sick, but you got to see if you can get him to come out here. And that was Kinsey.
Okay.
He became the artist that drew the DC logo
DC,
and Dub and all those things. But Kinsey had come out. Let me have something to drink.
Peppermint tea.
Dude, this is so cool. Dude.
Yeah.
It can be like a run-on story, kind of. That's the thing. But that's the way it was back then.
Yeah.
Everything was touching each other in some way.
It's insane. So Shepard Fairey moved out to LA.
San Diego.
I'm sorry, San Diego.
Yeah, so we've known each other for a long time. He sent me, when I had a pro spotlight in Transworld, I asked the world to send me photos of their artwork because I wanted to make a book about art and skateboarding.
Okay.
This was in 92. And that was the first time. I had skated with Shepard when he was about 15 in Charleston on a skate demo. But which he reminded me of years later. You travel the world for skate demos, and everybody starts to blend into one. It's like I know you from somewhere.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But hundreds of dates, hundreds of little bad street setups and whatever it was at the time. But I had the way I knew Shepherd was we were East Coast kids, and we had some similar struggles to get out of the East Coast and do the things that we were doing, or to get recognition. Him more in art, but he was an awesome skater. But he had sent me a box in '92 when I did that interview, and he had these stickers. Andre the Giant Has a Posse, and I was like, damn, it's almost off-putting. I'm looking at this guy, 7'4", 500 and something pounds, or 540 pounds, and I'm like, what does it mean? It was like interesting, but also off-putting. But no, I didn't really know what it was, and that was the kind of experience everybody was having around New York and the places like Providence where he lived at the time, and but there was something about it where I was just like, I got to talk to this kid. In the letter, I'm sure he said, like, I met you in Charleston when I was 15 or whatever. And then I called his house. At the time, you just put your phone number and everything in there. I called his house, and his mom picked up in Charleston, like, hello, like kind of in that, Southern twang or whatever. And, Shepherd, you got a phone call? And he comes to the thing. It's, and I just was talking to him, like, man, this is really cool stuff that you're doing, And, just connected with him over that. And he gave me, I had a bunch of that art for a long time where it was like, the kind of original all hand done stuff. I do have a lot of that stuff of his. Wow. But later when Aaron Rose started doing, the Alleged Gallery in New York and wanted to write a book. Well, the short story about the book was, at the time, nobody believed that the things that were being done in skateboarding were art at all. Okay. Like, I had an art teacher in art school that was failing me in classes in art school because I'd bring in sort of graffiti style characters that I had been doing. She's like, this is not art. It will never be art. What? It will never be considered art. It was like, I'm already putting this on skateboards, bitch. This is real. It's already out there, But that was kind of the thing, people, our little scene loved it, couldn't get enough of it. There wasn't very much of it. Right. But Shepherd fell into that category. He was like out ahead of it, and doing something that was really unique. I was calling MIT Press, calling like all these different, what I would consider kind of, forward thinking, or people that should be recognizing this stuff. And I just got the door shut on me, every single thing. Nobody wanted to publish a book about the art of skateboarding at that time. Okay. So Aaron Rose reached out to me, and I had known him because I'd shown in the Alleged Gallery, and he said, I'm going to do something. What are you doing with all that stuff? Did you get all this artwork? What are you doing with it? And I said, I'll send it to you, man, because he wanted to make a book. He ended up doing some great stuff with that, I mean, he did Beautiful Losers and, some of the other shows and things. He really made a huge contribution to what I would consider the art of this generation,
Okay.
But I had told Shepherd, come out to San Diego. If you come out here, we'll figure out how to do something. We can make a skateboard. We can do this. We can do that. And then he and Kinsey and I just sort of ended up in a room designing, graphic designing and stuff. He hadn't learned how to use a computer yet. He was cutting Ruby Lith and doing all that kind of stuff, which was his style of art. And Kinsey and I had started using computers. Kinsey actually came from Pittsburgh to Atlanta to go to the same art school that I had gone to. So he and I met and skated together in Atlanta when I still lived out there, and did some music stuff together and artwork for music and things like that. But we sat in a room, I think probably 95, 96, in downtown San Diego, and did some huge percentage of the graphics that were at ASR that year. Oh, it was crazy. Like we did lots of different, T-shirt graphics and things like that, and worked together for a few years. So it was very cool.
Yeah. We skipped a big part here. Are you gonna get?
Can I draw it in this book? Because then it'll be more like I might want to keep it for longer.
Yeah, he's gonna get busy on some art.
We'll just switch it up.
Oh yeah. Oh, there you go. Can you draw a caricature of me? Is this how do?
Yeah.
What do you, or no, I don't want to tell you what to draw.
But you know, I'll make you look like my kind of characters, which will be dark and demented.
As you're sketching that, you know, we'll talk.
Let's do.
But we skipped over a bunch of Schmitt Stix stuff. You were talking about, because after Schmitt Stix, right? You guys formed a new deal. That was after only like a couple years.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if you can multitask.
I can.
No, but please keep. I'd love. Yeah. Why did that come about? Why did you guys do New Deal?
Going back into the time of skating for Schmitt Stix in the era of Gator.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So Schmitt Stix owned by Vision.
Mm-hmm.
Paul was the engine of the concave, you know, did the first rails, all the things that skaters were using at the time. Paul was basically responsible for creating that, you know, not even a formally trained engineer, but a guy who was an apprentice to a boat maker, a wooden boat maker in Florida, and learned how to warp wood and do all these different things, and say, like, I think I can make skateboards out of this, you know, kicktails and, you know, concaves and all that stuff. I think Dorfman was cashing in on that really great acquisition of Paul being like his guy that would do this stuff. And so Vision was getting all these boards and everything. And Dorfman was sort of directing all the attention to this superstar, Gator, who was, you know, in all fairness, one of the raddest skateboarders ever. Like, could skate anything, was amazing, great skateboarder. But the first of the real, like, ego way bigger than his skateboarding. Even though his skateboarding was huge, you can imagine how big the ego has to be. You know, where a Christian was a guy that had an ego in skating, he was also one of the coolest guys ever. So, you know, you just were like, yeah, Christian, like, you know, biker pants, like big airs, that's amazing, you know. I'm sure I wore biker pants under my regular Mad Rats shorts at one point, you know what I mean? But it's like, with Christian it was all okay, but with Gator, it always rubbed me the wrong way. And I think it rubbed a lot of the guys in Orange County area that were, you know, in Schmitt Stix and Vision and stuff the wrong way. And there just was no shine on the rest of us, you know, like literally no shine. And so Chris Miller, who is my favorite vert skater of all time, it was our guy on Schmitt Stix. Like, he was the thing that for me made me so proud to be on Schmitt Stix, because Chris is on the team and he's an artist and an amazing skater, the best vert skater, best style. On a skateboard and a surfboard, by the way. I've surfed with that guy, and he's incredible on a surfboard too. And Chris was sort of like needed more shine. You know, he needed to, you know, do his thing. And I think he was kind of getting to the point where he wanted us to do our own, you know, break away and do our own thing, and he wanted to do his own thing. And he sort of went to Dorfman. I'm going to recall his story for you, but I mean, as far as I know it, he sort of went to Dorfman and said, you know, I want to do my own thing, and got shut down. And so he left and started his own company, Planet Earth, which, you know, these things happen for a reason. You know what I mean? So it was awesome. But that sunk me, and it sunk Douglas, and it sunk these guys that were on Schmitt at the time, because he was like our, you know, our guy, you know. And even though, you know, at that time I was street skating and stuff, like I would travel with Chris, we would, you know, share hotel rooms, and we'd draw together and just talk about life and all this stuff. And it was like, you know, he was like the reason to be on Schmitt really for me. And so I was sort of, you know, tooling around trying to see if I could find another sponsor, and like talking to Nodis with SMA, you know, kind of starting at that point. And Chris bailed. And so coming up right around that time was the Del Mar Street Contest. It was a street and a vert contest, but it was a street contest where Matt Hensley came out and kind of just blew everybody's mind, you know, kickflip to backside airs over the banks and, you know, things like that. But we kind of cornered Paul at that moment, and Douglas was sort of in this mode where he's like, you know, like Douglas has a lot of energy. He's got a huge amount of energy, and wherever he directs it, something's moving in that direction. You know, you just have to get on board and keep going with it. And so, you know, I think he was really the impetus to make it happen. And he had some buddies in the UK that had a shop called The New Deal. And he said he and I talked a lot, and we were like, you know, we got to do something. Like, I mean, I'm gonna bail, you're gonna bail, we're all gonna end up bailing this team. We gotta bum rush Paul, and we gotta basically say to him, dude, you're either gonna leave. Basically, what he had to do was break a really thick contract with Vision and walk away from, you know, a big check, a big royalty payments, his own wood shop, all this stuff that was kind of the perks of being in the Vision family. And, you know, Douglas and I were basically like, you know, kind of went up to him and said, hey, look, man, this is the deal. You're either going to quit Vision and start a new company, or we're all bailing, not just us, but the whole team. And so that would have been Schmitt Stix walking out the door kind of thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Paul was like, in his usual Paul fashion, because he's kind of like the most go with the flow type of guy you'll ever meet. He was like, all right. I guess it's pretty cool then that I started my own secret wood shop 2 years ago, and I've been making boards. I can make all the boards we need to make. And he started like all of a sudden turn crafty. And
Why did he start his own secret if he already had this
because
thing
he
with
was
Vision?
on the wall.
He was creating all this, what I would call new technology for skateboards at the time, from concave and all these things. And it would basically just became the property of Vision.
Yeah.
You know, and I think he was a super creative guy and wanted to
Probably
do his
had
own
his own
thing. He was like,
side.
I want my own thing,
Yeah.
you know? And so Schmitt was his thing, and he had to walk away from his name.
Yeah.
You know, that's a pretty crazy thing. So
They probably owned his name.
They did. Yeah, they still do. I think they can reproduce Schmitt boards to
Damn.
infinity.
I think they actually do make like the
They
couple
do.
of boards, yeah.
That's foul,
rip
but
saw and
that's,
shit like that.
you know, that shows you kind of like what they did. They did back then. I don't know them now or anything, but in retrospect, it was just about, you know, feeling that need, as all of us were kind of DIY makers of our own things at that time, feeling that need just to break out. And so we cornered him, and he said, okay. We were in this little hotel down on the beach in Del Mar. I don't remember the street names down there, but it's like the only little motel on the beach down there. And we all got in the hotel room together and just, you know, basically rushed him and said, you know, you got to do this. And that night, you know, the team we had was amazing. We had Ed Templeton was our, you know, AM skater coming up on Schmitt Stix and, you know, ripping. And, you know, we had some guys that we were like, if we take these guys and make a company, like this could be real. And we were sitting in the room. And of course, in my classic fashion, I was like, I need a napkin and I need to draw this logo for this new company right now. Cause Steve's like, we can call it the New Deal. Like my friends have a skate shop called the New Deal. I just got to call. He literally left, I think, to call them and ask them if it was okay if he used the name for a skate company or something.
Crazy.
Wow.
And we were like, yeah, fuck yeah, we want a new deal. That's who we are. We want a new
Makes
deal.
yeah,
That sounds
perfect
perfect.
sense.
Like, you know, let us know if it's okay if we use the name. And then he came back and I remember just like kind of sketching on a napkin this idea, because I was thinking, you know, the thing that it has to be if we do a company is it has to be for the kids, the skater kids, by the skater kids, and there's no rules
FUBU.
that we have to be around. We have to be in. You know, we have to be within a certain. Did you say FUBU? Completely different tangent, but like it is for us by us. Yeah, but it was that sort of a mentality. You know, like the skater owned company seemed to be like not a real thing at that point, because the like I said at one point, those guys in the Big Five just didn't seem to be really connected to it. Like they were basically cashing in on their hard work as kids or whatever it was, you know? But it just wasn't our vibe. And although I grew up, you know, idolizing, you know, Robert Williams and Jim Phillips and all these amazing artists that gave me my start in learning how to draw and stuff as a kid and copying their graphics and all that stuff, there was something, it was a timing thing where it was just like, you know, for me, I was in this place where I was making street art at the time. We called it graffiti, but it was like going out and doing these huge characters, you know, on walls and illegally coming back the next day with a camera and taking a picture of it and then like transcribing that onto paper and making skate graphics out of it. That's like how the thought process was. And so, you know, for stickers and stuff. And I was at a point where all these ideas were coming out of my head. Yeah. And even that first night we were thinking about how it would work and what would it be like. And, you know, we basically set these rules down. Every skater has to control his own image, has to decide what his graphics are going to be, even have a say in what his ad's going to be, you know, what he's going to do his own thing. And I think when we first launched New Deal, the first year of ads at least were exactly that, like Ed Templeton turned pro and he had his artwork on the page and, go buy Ed Templeton's boards, the one with the crappy graphics.
Yeah.
It was like, it was exactly what our vision was. And so we were uniquely positioned to be able to do that because Paul, had this wood shop.
Right.
So we could make the boards. And that was at a time when there weren't, there were vans, but there weren't, skateboards weren't at what I would say, kind of, hard to describe, but like they weren't considered to be sort of a mediocre part of a skateboarder's life. They were the only important thing in skateboarding was what board you had, what the ply was made up of, how the concave was, stuff that I still don't understand to this day. But Paul does that shit.
Exactly.
So
what shape did you ride? Or what size board do you usually skate? Oh, the small toothpick one you said.
Well, I skated that toothpick one, and I think that became the Siamese board. So that board behind you is actually not the Siamese board, but it's my original shape. That's my first pro model shape. Yeah. But when we just decided to do this New Deal thing, we went and did some transfer papers, and we were playing with them, and we only had my shape and the Siamese transfer papers.
Oh, okay.
So the first day that we did it together, Steve, Paul, and I, just a month or two ago,
Just threw it on there.
we just did it on that board. So
The Siamese board
I
was
brought
great.
that for you guys. That's historical. Is reimagined history or something? I don't know.
No, but that board was awesome because it was fully symmetrical.
It was.
Yeah.
I think not exactly the Siamese, which is not exactly, but the closest thing that was in the market to being symmetrical. And that was because at the time, I told you about the nollies off the wall that I was doing. I was calling nose ollies at the time. I had gone out shooting with the, I want to say Christian Strike because I just saw him the other day, but
Christian Klein?
Christian Klein, the photographer, and I'd gone out shooting with him, and I was going to shoot that ad that I did, First National Bank of Reality, which was probably one of the first kinked rails that was in an ad, and I had gone there with him and said, "Hey, I'm going to slide that rail," and he was like, "Can't be done." Told Ed about it, can't be done. Like everybody said it can't be done. So I was like, I'm fucking doing that.
Yeah,
I went back, and I think the first time I slid it and then fell off at the end, and Christian was like, okay, I'll get you had to kind of prove to the photographer at that time you could do something.
Right.
And then they would go and shoot like 100, photos until you made it.
It's a lot of film.
A lot of film, yeah. So it was that sort of a thing. So I sort of proved that I could do it.
Okay.
And then
you did it.
I did it, and
Yeah.
it took a long time to make it, and I came out of it sketchy. But it was at the time it was sort of, I'd say, innovative in that area of handrails.
Yeah.
But that same day, I took Christian to the speed bump, and I said, watch this and see if you can figure out how to take a picture of it. And I was like popping my nose off the speed bump. I had the longer nose now, so I had learned how to snap my nose off of it. When I say snap my nose, it was like I'd snap my nose and it would come up completely vertically like this and fly through the air with me, and then I would push my foot down and try to land it. And my front foot, my front foot would come off and stuff like that. And he was just like, "That's not a trick. Like, you can't shoot a picture of that trick, And I was like, dude, just take some pictures. I mean, like, I'm supposed to be skating. Like, just take the pictures of it.
Yeah.
So I had him take a few pictures. I had this smiley face with a gunshot in it on my shirt. I remember very clearly. And I was just trying to get it. I couldn't get it to snap and get high, but I was getting off the ground. I was like, it's a nose ollie, I swear. It's like, skating fakie and popping your tail, but you're riding forward and popping your nose.
Right.
And he was denying that it was possibly a trick. And so, but yeah, that was during that same time. If you can find when that ad came out, which I don't remember, it was like around the same time we shot that.
Whoa.
But I think that was the next wave for me of skating too. I think skateboarding, I kind of hit a plateau when I got into street skating and stuff. And then once I saw people like, Chris Hall and Ali Mills and Pepe Martinez and Lil Stevie and like these kind of guys that were, kind of unknown East Coast guys at the time.
Do you remember Dan Gallagher?
Another name. And he's one of the
He was from Boston area.
Boston?
But
Okay.
I think he did move to DC later on.
I thought I remembered him in Pulaski, but I know the name. Yeah. But then I sort of got a breath of fresh air. I was like, you know what? There is more to do, And so I got really into kind of trying to push that Nolly thing forward.
When did you make up the name Nolly?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. I think that was a natural progression of the name, but I was saying nose ollie.
I like nose ollie.
Yeah, me too. Actually.
It's a good one. I'm gonna start calling it that. The nose ollie.
And I don't begin to say that I'm the first person that ever did that, because at the time Rodney was doing heli pops and things like that. There was already like a hint towards that, but somehow at that time Rodney wasn't considered street skating. He was sort of in this otherworldly kind of place of his own where it's like a freestyle wasn't cool, but he was doing something super cool. And so people like Chris Hall would rather hang out and watch Rodney's freestyle ride than watch what people were doing in the, the other part of the skate contest, the street contest. And anyway, that sort of pushed it forward for me, because I thought, hey, even though it was flat ground and everything was on the ground, and for me, I liked curbs and stuff. And so going up curbs and trying to get up benches and banks and things like that, it seemed to be that there was another age of skating coming.
The New Deal, when you guys launched that, how did it do? Did it take off, or
I think,
was it hard to do?
Or, well, we had to hide it at first.
Oh, you did.
So we wanted to still get our checks from Vision, but we wanted to be sneaky and kind of develop some, crackpot scheme. And I was sleeping in Paul's garage, and Gorm Boberg, who is the artist that I worked with, he actually did that Siamese graphic. And if you took that off the wall, we also tested a spray can on the other side of it that he did. But he's an amazing artist. He's from Sweden. One of the guys that skated for our team, total ripper, awesome guy. I'm actually working with him now.
Sick.
30 years later.
That's
on
amazing.
this stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wait, so is that the graphic that you drew on the napkin?
No.
Oh.
That's another story. But
you changed it, right?
I drew a graphic almost like this on the napkin with, I think, a pen or something that was in the room. Like, there's always a ballpoint pen in the room.
Doesn't Ed Templeton have the original one you drew or something?
Yeah, so Ed and Deanna were there in the room too, and I think they must have had a car, because they came down from Huntington Beach or something, and so they were gonna go to the grocery store and get some snacks and drinks and stuff like that. And I was like,
let me
go with you. And then I got into the place, and I'm like, I need to get something to draw a logo. I've got to keep going, And so I found a box of crayons and a pad of paper in the school section of the grocery store. And then we went back to the room where everybody was hanging out and sort of, basking in the afterglow of the fact that we just decided to leave this huge company to start our own thing. Yeah. And I drew the original logo in crayon, which is the one that Ed has.
Okay. What was wrong with that logo? Why did you change it and make this new logo? Or was it similar?
Oh, very similar.
Oh, very similar.
Yeah.
What was
just in, as you'll see if I ever draw this thing, my drawings are never symmetrical. So I drew the first New Deal logo, and it was just sort of scratched as fast as I could in there, because I said to everybody, the logo has to look like a little kid drew it. Yeah. It can't look like those polished things that we were seeing. Like the 80s graphic design, now that I look back at it, I absolutely love it, and it's amazing. Yeah. But it was just so corny and boring, and it was like...
polished.
Too polished looking. Yeah. And so this needed to be raw. And the opposite of what was out there was really what I was going for. Yeah. And then I drew it out, and we still call it the napkin logo because of doing it on the napkin that night. But the final one was one or two iterations later that we ended up using for everything.
And then later on you added the yellow background, right?
Yeah, so
it popped.
The way I remember the yellow background story, which was, you asked about how we did when we came out in the market. Yeah. We published ads for about 6 months before we launched with no contact, no info, and nothing.
Still getting paid
by Vision.
Gotcha.
And and Paul, of course, because he was like he wasn't the adult. It was, in the family, he was just the guy who had, more knowledge about what we needed to do a skate company. Called his attorney and said, look it up and see if we can get the trademark.
Okay. Yeah.
So the trademark guy came back and said, as long as you're not a rock and roll band and you don't make coffee, you can use this name New Deal. And so I was like, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, let's just write that at the bottom of the ad. As long as we're not a rock and roll band and we don't make coffee. ... in like scratchy pen or pencil or something.
So all these ads weren't of skate photo. They were just the logos and certain.
I don't know how many we ran, and we might have only run 1 or 2 ads during that time, but we did the logo. And I want to say that the first ad that came out that had a skater was probably Danny Sargent. I can't remember exactly the order of that year.
You couldn't put yourselves in the ads.
Yeah,
you're getting paid.
And nobody knew where it was coming from. And
So
so
which builds a hype.
Yeah, no one leaked it all? Like
no one leaked it. Well, no one knew. Like we were living in Paul's house.
No Twitter or Instagram.
No social media back then.
Well, even like people talking, just, you know what I mean? Like you hand over something to the magazine.
We were secretive. People didn't know. I think me and Gorm and
That would be like if one of us,
Justin and Ed, were filming like a little promo video, and we didn't even tell anybody that that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
So nobody knew. We was only us.
it'd be like one of us was doing something and one of us leaked it.
Yeah,
It'd be like, why would you do that?
It would have been exactly like that. Yeah.
But how was it when you heard, like, you saw it in the magazine, people are talking like, what is this? And you're just sitting there like,
I love that.
Yeah, nobody knows that I'm behind it.
It's a nice logo.
Yeah. But when it launched, I think it was right place, right time. There was a leak that happened right before we were launching. And Douglas wanted to get pre-orders, or I don't know what it was called at the time, but he wanted to get the shops to purchase, like, we better make sure we can sell this shit too. Mm-hmm. And so he sent a fax out from Paul's house with
prices.
No, it was a letter from him saying, don't buy our old pro models because we're launching a new company with Ed Templeton, the guy who just won the street contest at blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
The problem was that it was a fax machine. So at the top of the fax machine, it said Paul Schmitt and his phone number. Oh. And so everybody who got that fax was called immediately like, Paul, what's going on? What are you doing? What are you doing? You guys are doing this new thing. So that was out of the bag, even though Douglas was trying to play it cool and sort of do something sneaky.
Right. But it was right at the launch. So
right before, yeah.
Right.
And then we launched it, and I think this is a question for Paul and Steve probably, but I think 3rd in the market in the first 3 months.
Wow.
Something to that effect.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
The market wasn't that big, but there were these big guys that were basically like the
controlling it.
800-pound gorilla in the room type of thing. And we were able to sort of end around them because it was so different and so new. And I wouldn't even, if I look back at it, I wouldn't call the stuff that we did, graffiti hip hop style, but that's what I was influenced by. And I think, there was a little bit of cartoons and, growing up on Dr. Seuss and Disney and all the things that I did, but the graphics like the Sergeant, Monkey Bomber and my graphic with the kid on the tricycle going down the street and all that. I mean, those were the same kind of things I was spray painting on walls at that time.
And then the yellow background came in because
It pops.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Yeah, it does pop, but it did not come in because of that. It came in because we wanted to do black and white ads, and they wouldn't have stood out. They were the cheapest way you could advertise. Yep. And I said, what about black and white with one color? And if we can do one color, let's do yellow because it's super bright. And so that became the background, color, the logos and all that kind of stuff.
So kind of born out of necessity.
It was born out of necessity, but it became like a trademark. And everybody, thinks about New Deal. They think about that yellow. Yep. So it was cool. It was
funny how things
I like to take credit
right?
for it being like, kind of an art school prodigy that came up with this mass, but it wasn't. It was just born out of necessity. You needed
one color in the ad.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
That's so cool, man.
It's great. And now you're bringing it back 30 years later, bro. I'm just.
You're gonna do it again. Don't remind me.
Yeah.
Time flies, man.
What's funny is when New Deal came out, like me and my friends were all psyched on it, and I remember the shop had your board.
In Boston.
Yeah, in Boston, whatever. And I told my friend, like, I want to get that Andy Howell board. And I went to the skate shop after school, and the board was gone. I was like, fuck, who got it? And like the shop owner's like, oh, your friend Mike just bought it.
Yeah, right.
After you told him you were going to get it, he totally punked you?
Man.
So I had a Danny Sargent board.
Oh, which was amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
That's awesome. What was your... I'm not supposed to interview you guys, but what was your thought on New Deal? Like seeing it come out of nowhere and sort of looking totally different. Like,
I loved it. I was a huge Ed Templeton fan, so.
Awesome.
Well, it seems like to me
too. I'm a huge Ed Templeton fan.
Yeah, we all. But it seems like to me, like you said, they were the big players, and then you guys come along, and you're now. I mean, here's this new thing, and people get excited about new shit. Especially. I mean, with the team and everything.
Did Dorfman freak out?
Oh, he was pissed. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't close enough to it because, like I said, I lived in Atlanta at the time. So I came out and I was like camp at Paul's for 3 months, but I was like, I can't stay in California. I got to get back to the East Coast. And I would go back there. So I think I was probably back there by the time Dorfman's kind of retaliation came out. I think if you look and dig in the mags at that time, he probably tried to say some quippy, funny thing about us to try to like diss us, but you know, he just didn't have he didn't have Rocco's humor. You know,
his wit.
He didn't have that wit. It was just like, you're corny, and there it is for everybody to read. You know? So it was. I think it kind of turned out that way for him.
Oh shit!
Damn.
But we didn't look back. I mean, I literally don't think I even gave Dorfman another thought after that. It was just like, we got a wide open canvas to do anything we want. Like, what's next? What's next? What's next?
There you go.
And I immediately wanted to do fashion stuff. I wanted to do clothing, but there wasn't. Skateboard companies didn't do clothing. You had maybe a T-shirt, but you'd never had anything else besides that.
Right, pants.
And so I was skating in Atlanta with my friends, and Atlanta gets fucking hot in the summertime. And so we'd skate super late at night, but it doesn't cool off like it does here. It stays hot all night. And so we were taking these kind of hip hop jeans, because we were hanging out with all the hip hop kids, and cutting the jeans off and making these baggy
shants.
Massive pants that were like skirt pants. And I came out to California, and those guys hadn't seen it. It was just me and my friends were wearing those on the East Coast. We were taking like 38 and 40 inch jeans, and then just cinching them up with a belt and cutting the bottoms off.
Letting
And
the belt hang.
And this is at the time already of the tiny wheels and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I came out to California, and I said, and I was wearing them, and they were like, what is that? You know? And I was like, dude, they're the raddest to skate in. I mean, I felt like they were the raddest to skate in because they didn't stick to my legs like my tight pants would stick to my legs when I was sweating. Because you don't have like a little sweat on your brow in Atlanta. Your whole body sweats all the time, you know? And so you lose weight every night, you know?
Totally.
And so these didn't stick. And so I was like, this is what we have to do. And I had the idea, if I could take the silhouette of the jean and then just cinch it in myself and put, you know, the waistband at a 32 inch, but the jean at a 36 inch, then we could have baggy jeans, but they would still fit. Yeah. And so thus the concept of that was born, but, and there wasn't anything like that in the world at that time. And so Paul and Steve were basically like the naysayers of like, no way can you do this. Don't do this. I'm saying, dude, watch what happens when the video comes out when we're wearing these pants, you know? And New Deal had that buzz. It had like kind of a, I don't know what you'd say, but like a trendsetter sort of a buzz to it at that point of sort of like, you know, whatever's happening new is coming from these guys, these skaters. Yeah. And we did, and it came out. And then Paul, bless his heart, who was always given the job of figure out how to make the shit that I was coming up with or whatever, if I could get it through the filter of those guys. Because Paul was like in the wood shop. He was making the most amazing skateboards. And another thing that I'm super proud of in my life, of having been able to skate for Paul or with Paul for so long in my life, because I feel like he's one of the innovators that stayed true to what he did in the industry over and over again. Even after the industry went to China and the industry went everywhere else, you know, he's a really rad part of skateboarding. And, but he doesn't have the vision that I had of these other parts of culture. You know, he's strictly like a technical engineer type of a guy. And Douglas was in a different scene in San Jose and that kind of thing at the time. And so I was bringing this hip hop and DJ and, you know, all this kind of stuff out to California to these guys that were SoCal, you know, kind of style guys, and just forcing it on them, being like, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing, you know? And I kind of pushed it through a few times. So the big deals, which is what we ended up calling those
big
jeans,
deals,
caught on pretty strong. And then, you know, somewhere around that same time, the Gypsies and Thieves and Third Rails and those kind of guys,
Blind
which
jeans.
were, you know, and then Blind came out with jeans. But I think we sort of cracked that as a part of the market that didn't exist yet, was like the fully skater thing. You know, Drawers was out, but it wasn't a board company, so they were sort of tangential to, you know, being a core skate company. You know what I mean?
It's incredible.
crazy crazy times.
What was it like seeing the brand kind of alternate and go a different route? Like, because the New Deal that I knew growing up was the whole different team, different logos. What was that like, seeing that?
Or are you talking about from 1995 on?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so my career as a pro skateboarder came to an end in 1995.
Yeah.
I had, at that time, we created New Deal. I had created, this is another topic, but I had created Underworld Element, changed the name to Element. It was Element Skateboards. Yes, I'm, co-founder with Paul and Steve of Element Skateboards.
Okay.
And then had sort of migrated Element into this Element fine artist type of thing, and I had done my last skateboard and all that kind of stuff, and I was just like, okay, I'm going to go back into doing the art stuff. And through some issues that happened during that time with a guy who's now running Element or working on Element, I just had this taste in my mouth that I couldn't continue on.
But wait, before you get into what happened to the New Deal? It was like 3 years, and then you go to do this Underworld Element thing. Why?
I was just I was constantly creating new stuff.
You wanted new shit.
And what New Deal was in 1990, Underworld Element was to me in 1992.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, so it was 2 years.
Yeah, that's 3 years, 90, 91, 92.
I'm sorry,
in 92,
Didn't have my abacus.
I started to come up with this concept of Underworld Element. And it always had two concepts together. The Underworld, which was the dark side of skating, and then Element, which was the clean side of skating. And those two things, I always had this thing about oxymorons. When two opposites come together to make something new that's, unique and different, which Zero Sophisto is the same sort of thing. I've just continued to do that for some reason. Sick nature. in my life,
But so when you did Underworld Element, what happened to the New Deal?
I had already gotten some amazing artists involved in New Deal. So Jose's style,
Jose Gomez
style sort of, was his own sort of graffiti, bubbly character style that he started doing. His and my style sort of merged together a little bit.
So
I had set what I would call sort of a creative standard for New Deal.
Gotcha.
And almost immediately, even with Gorm and I drew really similarly too. And so people didn't know until this day, and that's something we're really excited with New Deal, to tell the story of like these other guys besides me. My name was out there because I was in the ads or whatever. And I did a lot of the artwork and wrote the ads and did all this kind of stuff. But, Gorm, Jose, even Justin Bua, who's a famous artist as well, was one of the guys that did art for us back then. There were a range of different artists that were doing art. And so New Deal had sort of like, that ship had set its course, and so it was easy for me to just say, like, Jose, you keep doing the same style.
You pass the torch, and you wanted to create something new.
Yeah, and I was in Atlanta at the time, and there was a convergence for me of music. The first, I was in one of the first Macintosh labs at my art school, so I was doing things on the computer, and that was sort of a new thing at the time. Music, computers, skateboarding were sort of converging together for me in a weird way. The art and fine art, or graffiti art as it was then. And so I built this studio in Atlanta that I called Urbanistics. And it basically was, I was super inspired by Warhol's factory. I had grown up, and especially through art school, looking at art history, and I was privileged enough to meet Keith Haring and see Basquiat's art on the street in New York and things like that. And so was super inspired by Warhol's approach, which was, he wasn't a street artist, but he was a artist who appropriated what was going on in our everyday lives and then made us look at it in a different way. Yeah. And then he said, well, while I'm here, I may as well make films. While I'm here, I may as well make Interview Magazine. While I'm here, I may as well start Interview Magazine needs models. I may as well start a modeling agency. So he had this little spot where, like, everybody from, the celebrities of the day had to go to Warhol's factory in New York. Of course, I wasn't of the age to do that, but I was so inspired by that. I thought, wow, I should make something like that in Atlanta. Yeah. And at the time, I was starting to spend a lot of time with the guy who I'd met, Dallas Austin, who's a really, accomplished music producer and an old friend. And my son's godfather, and I've known him for many, many years, and was starting to hang out with him a lot. And he opened this door. I was a little fan of hip hop music. I had started, writing rhymes and beating on desks when I was in high school with a buddy of mine in Virginia Beach named Corey Baines, Prince Korski.
Okay.
And Corey, my friend Otha, who was a punk drummer, the kids I skated with on street, he was beating on the drums, and like Corey was busting these rhymes, and I was like, oh my God, like I've never seen anything like this. Like he just started talking, and like nobody could take their eyes off. It was amazing. So when I got down to art school and started to get the freedom to go out into the world, and I didn't have to be home by the street lights came on. I started going to clubs. I started to meet people, and I had money from skating. At the time it was limited money. Now we would look at it and go, yeah, it wasn't very much money, but for me it was carte blanche to do anything I wanted. And so I bought some recording equipment, put it in my house, and I just started like making beats and stuff, all inspired by this guy Corey.
What age where are we talking about right now? What age were you?
This is 88, 89. I started to play with it.
Okay, so this is Schmitt Stix time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was kind of an oddity, like maybe Tommy at that time was busting out to Eric B and Rakim, you know what I mean? And that was one of the ways Tommy and I really connected, was over music.
Yeah.
But back home I was sort of, doing that in my little secret lab. There was nothing that was getting published or anything. But
you and Paul Schmitt with their secret labs. Huh?
Yeah. Seriously.
We need one of those.
Yeah.
Going off on a tangent,
Sure,
I was super into kind of making this stuff, and this kid named Buck came up to me, who was a skate kid.
Joey Brzezinski?
No.
Bucky Lassick.
Nope. No, just Buck. He was in a group called Y'all So
Buck
Stupid, which is a hip hop group
Y'all
in
So
Atlanta.
Stupid.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard it before.
Sounds really
They had
familiar, but
they had
I
a
don't
few
know.
songs, very like southern hip hop band. But they had Glenn Friedman shoot the photo for the cover of their album.
Oh.
And I recognized his style. It was like a picture of those guys jumping, like the, Beastie Boys style photo of the fisheye lens type of thing. And I ended up connecting with this kid. They're like, oh yeah, you got to meet this kid Buck. He skates too. And he's like doing rap music. And so I started talking to Buck, and then H2O and these other guys that had went on to do lots of production in hip hop down there. And we were hanging out skating and stuff, and he said, you got to meet Dallas, he's like helping us with our music and stuff like that. So I remember going to Dallas's studio called Rowdy Studios in Atlanta, and I got stopped by this guy, Dave Gates. He literally was the front gate to getting into this thing. And he's like, bust a rhyme. And so I had to bust a rhyme, like right then. I was kind of like, when I was at home, it was easy to bust a rhyme because there's nobody watching me or anything. And I was like, oh shit, I got to bring the game.
Here's Dave Gates. You got to
perform. Didn't know who he was. And it was kind of dark out too. It was like a little spooky, And he had, it feels like it now, yeah. But he had me bust a rhyme. He's like, all right, cool. Go on and you can go hang out in the studio.
Wow.
And then it was like the doors opened into hip hop for me.
Interesting.
Do you remember the rhyme?
The South, no. I do remember rhymes. I can bust a rhyme for you.
But you don't remember what you...
I don't remember what that one was, But
Wait, you can do one right now?
Yeah.
You got a rap for us? Do we
I might need a tea first.
Do we not?
My throat's scratchy.
Okay, well,
But I can, yeah.
Yeah?
I literally will rhyme for the next hour if you want to, but I've got lots and lots of rhymes. But when I went in Dallas's studio,
Yeah.
I mean, this was a guy. He started in R&B when he was 15. Okay. He was making songs for the roller rink, and somebody saw him and said like, hey, I want you to make a song. I'll trade you, make a song for me, and I'll trade you a keyboard.
Oh.
And being a 15, 16-year-old kid, he didn't know any better, And so he busted out a song on this new keyboard and stoked to have a new keyboard. And it ended up being like either gold or platinum or something, like something crazy, And then boom, he figured out the business and all that kind of stuff. And he had launched, if you know TLC, the group TLC,
of course.
that was his, his thought. He created it, produced it, all that stuff. ABC, which was another R&B group, another Bad Creation. He did that one. And he was into punk and hip hop and all these things, but he was just really good at making R&B music.
Oh.
And hip hop hadn't even happened much in the South yet. The Dirty South hadn't come around to be the Dirty South. This Jermaine Dupri was there with like crisscross and things like that, but it was like the glossy version. While New York had backpack hip hop and all this stuff, and I had been going to New York to skate all the time, so I was hanging out with those guys in New York.
Interesting.
And walking down the street with Harold Hunter and stopping and getting 40s, and like each different spot you can stop on the street to get a 40 and run into Jam Master Jay riding his bike. And like New York was just so rich with all these things happening, and you skate all day and you skate from place to place to place and end up at the party, and like the movie Kids, you just end up wherever you end up.
Of course.
And so, like, I remember meeting Harmony Korine in Washington Square Park. He was just hanging out, big beanie on, skating around the park. It's like there was so much vibrant things happening in New York at the time. And I could see that was possible in Atlanta, but I hadn't seen it yet, you know? So I would hang out in Dallas's studio and talk to him about what I was, experiencing in skating. And, I was busting out rhymes, and he was talking to me about getting signed to a label and, taking me and my little crew of like, haphazard skate kids basically that had created a rap group to whatever it was, strip clubs, and like the club in Atlanta that was there was one club called Phoenix, which was like this super cool place to go at the time, and they'd walk us in through the like pulling the little ropes away and like let those kids in, and we were still sweaty from skating and all that kind of stuff. Like it was just crazy.
Kids.
But we sort of like made a little bit of an impact down there and connected with people, and I got to have this insight into the hip hop world that I wouldn't have had. I mean, I was into the music. Yeah. Strangely enough, I had met Premier and Guru when I was on a skate tour with Justin and Rick Ibiseta. We were in Tokyo, which I could tell that story also. But I ended up in this studio with Dallas meeting everybody from, Too Short to Busta Rhymes. I watched Eric Sermon record his solo album. Puffy was in there all the time. There were all these people that were coming from everywhere to his studio because it was this spot, to record stuff, And so instantly I was so attracted to being in hip hop, and I was into graffiti, and I was into the music that I started to get like pulled a little bit.
I was going to say
I was like, I think maybe that I want to do this for a while, and I was still skating, and I was still skating every night and doing all that stuff. But just super into hip hop. Yeah, and so we cut like a little demo of this group we created called oxymoron, Mass Profits.
Mass Profits.
Prophets. Okay. So profits to the masses, but the whole thing about the music industry was generating mass profits. So it was like everything sort of had that like little bit of sarcastic, cynical kind of twist to it. And the music was pretty cool. Like our DJ was Lil Jon.
Okay.
And that was really before OK. when he was just a punk rock skate kid, you know, listening to the Bad Brains and doing heel flips in the park. He was one of the dudes that we hung out with, and I heard he was starting to DJ. So I went over to his mom's house and picked him up, and down in the basement he had some turntables. I'm like, dude, bring your turntables. I've got like an 8-track recorder. So we went back to my house and started recording stuff with him and these two little kids, Matt B and Jay Sun, and we called them the child prodigies because they were like 15-year-old skate kids, but they were just like beat miners. They were looking for beats, looking for samples, and they would just sit there and go, I found this crazy thing from a Goofy record or from a Star Wars thing or whatever. And our music sounded like kids, almost like twisted kids music in a sense. It was a little bit of backpack, a little bit of different kinds of stuff that was going on at the time. And
what happened with this album?
It's basically like a set of songs. It's probably 8 songs or something that I've got somewhere. You guys can hear it.
Did it get released? And
it did not get released.
Why?
What? At the time, Dallas, the music industry was really slow. You would groom an artist. Like in skateboarding, you groom an artist for 5 minutes and they get a pro model.
Sometimes,
In music, you groom an artist for like 5 years before their first single ever drops. And I was like, dude, I'm a skater. I'm going to paint that on a wall and turn it into a graphic. Like if you're not putting this thing out, I don't know what we're going to do together.
So that kind of did that kind of turn you off now to the music thing and get back into skating?
A little bit, yeah. It turned me off to the speed of it. Right. And it's strangely enough, at the same time as Dallas was sort of grooming us, I would say, to sort of be ready to do performing, and, you know, those Dirty South audiences were pretty gnarly too. Like to try to get up and rap as a white kid in front of those people was crazy. But I had started a little streetwear brand that was solely streetwear called Zero Sophisto.
Yes.
And which was basically an alter ego of mine. It was like this kid, Sophisto, who was born in the middle of the city in Atlanta, and he was called Zero his whole life, and he was sort of crying out to the world about the things he saw around him that were, you know, he couldn't deal with it. He wanted to change, you know. And for me in the South, there was racism a lot because there was such a dichotomy between, you know, the city where we were skating and the people we were hanging out in, the vibrant culture and the music and the dreadlock circles of 50 dudes on the hill playing drums. You know, amazing things were happening and everybody was cool with each other. But then you go 10 minutes outside of the city and there's like a Aryan youth camp.
Oh wow.
You know, and so it was like a something, and I started making shirts with like Ku Klux Klan members that said idiocy under it, you know, and putting them out in the middle of the city and, you know, in Atlanta and stuff. And it was just like, I had this platform to be, I can make a t-shirt. I can do this, you know.
You've already been doing all that stuff. Yeah.
And it kind of, you know, selling it in Tokyo, selling it in London, selling it some in LA and some in New York and stuff. And this kid who was doing the distribution for me in London, I sent him the demo tape that we had done.
Okay.
And he goes, yeah, my roommate is trying to start his own label and all this kind of stuff. And then he put the guy, he's like, yeah, I want you to talk to this guy, you know. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, dude, I'm hanging out with Eric Sermon in like, you know, the studio over here. Like, I don't know what this guy's doing out there.
Yeah.
But he's somebody's roommate in some apartment somewhere. And he, you know, I talked to him at one point and he said, you know, my name's James, and I want to start this record label, and I like your music, but like I can't put you in a studio or do anything like that. You guys got to go in and record your own stuff, and like I'll put it out if you go in and record it, you know. So on one hand I had this guy and then Dallas, you know, and I was sort of like, it doesn't really balance out, because I was in a huge studio with like, you know, 5 recording rooms and an ongoing culture of things that were happening there. Turns out the guy was James Lavelle, and it was Mowax Records that he was getting ready to start.
Wow.
So, which was one of the most, I'd say, innovative record labels of the time period. So missed out heavily on that one. But I'd say that's the way it was. You know, I just go from thing to thing that I'm inspired by and continue on. So the few missed things that happen, you know, it's all good.
It is all good.
But I have followed those guys and loved everything he's done since then. So
wow.
Yeah. But music at that point, that was sort of the crescendo. It was like, okay, if this thing isn't going to happen, I'm just going to move out to California and just, you know, focus on skate stuff and Sophisto and you know all this kind of stuff. And that's what I ended up doing.
That's what you did.
1993, moved out to California. Had some buddies. Landed on New Year's Eve. Drove a U-Haul, 30-foot U-Haul with a trailer with a huge Jeep CJ5 with 34-inch tires on it, like, and behind that one of those soft tub hot tubs, the soft tub hot tub from Skypager, by the way.
Yeah.
And all this stuff, and just drove it out to California.
Wait a minute, so
landed at Chris Markovich and Ted Newsom's house on New Year's Eve. And
on New Year's Eve,
crashed on their floor. Yeah.
So wait, were you were doing graphics for New Deal while you were in Atlanta?
Yeah.
You were faxing them?
I was a pro skater, graphics for New Deal. You know, everything that happened from 1990 to 1993 was all done remotely.
Faxes.
What were they? 20-bit modems? 8-bit modems? I don't even know what the modems were, but you would dial it. You'd take your home phone, dial it, put it on a thing, and it would go. And I'd have to do it at night because it would take 8 hours to send a graphic to Paul on the West Coast. But
is this email?
I was just committed to never leaving the East Coast at that time. And then finally something clicked, and one day I was like, I'm out. You know, I'm gonna hit it.
Are we talking email? What are we talking there?
I think we probably, you know, used email somewhere in 93.
I feel like even if you had an email account, you could only send like 3 megabytes or something. Like it was super small. I don't know.
I
don't
should know all this
remember.
technical
Yeah.
stuff because I was definitely playing with it at the time,
Sure.
but I don't remember.
Huh.
It
Crazy.
kept going. But I had a little studio in my house,
Okay.
and then we kind of converted that to the urbanistic studio, and we had me. Dave Kinsey was over there. I think Jose Gomez was there some of the time. Johnny Shillareff, who's now doing Element. And then a buddy of mine, Ron Siegel, was there, who's
Okay.
kind of went into the film industry later. And we had a music studio downstairs, a loft with 2 bedrooms upstairs, a kitchen, and then a Mac studio with like 5. I was at the time Mac 2 CI, I
Sure,
think.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
But we were busting stuff out, and
It's
it was
amazing.
kind of half skate stuff and half music stuff. So we did Rowdy Records, like all the stuff for Rowdy during that time. Kinsey actually did a lot of the artwork for Rowdy back
So
then.
you were drawing it, scanning it in, probably streamlining it or something. Remember that program, Streamline?
I think we streamlined it, and maybe it was like Adobe Illustrator 1.
Yeah. Seriously.
It was probably the first one. I remember Photoshop, which was ridiculous. I mean, we had to write out the things we wanted to do in a sequence in Photoshop to get to the final product,
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to have to cut and paste this.
Yes.
Because there were no layers.
Right.
So you had to do everything to the picture. I remember later, like 95 or so, when I started I had Zero Sophisto, and I based it in Carlsbad.
Yeah.
And I was doing a girls' streetwear line called Girly Things. And at the time, I was trying to make videos, and Ted Newsom came over, and we started, messing around. He was doing a clothing line called REN, R-E-N, Racial Equality Now. And he was also the art director for Transworld for, the entire 90s, basically.
Right.
So, and he and I were old buddies, East Coast, almost East Coaster. And so, we were trying to push the limits of what was possible with these, I think they were called disc arrays.
Okay.
At the time, that was how you did a video. You had like a 2 gigabyte and a 2 gigabyte drive.
Yep.
And they somehow, I guess the hocus pocus mumbo jumbo that they told you was it throws the memory back and forth to multiply to make it work better or something. And I bought into it. It was probably $15,000.
I was gonna say.
for those drives.
For
Right.
a little mini, like a RAID drive
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
And then the first Adobe Premiere, using that to edit the videos,
Yep,
you know, and it was fucking hard to make
Yeah, I
a
bet.
video.
But it's
I
rad
remember
that you-
doing a Sophisto video. We called it Freedom.
Okay.
And Jamie was in it and had a sick part in there.
Jamie Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a bunch of guys. I think Josh Kalis was on the team, and Pepe was on
Martinez.
the team.
Yeah.
Was LeVar on there?
Yeah, LeVar McBride was on there. Yeah.
I was
I
gonna-
kind of assembled this team that was like insane team for a company that wasn't a board company.
Yeah.
I remember talking to some of the guys that were sponsored by a board company at that time. Like, I can't skate for you. I skate for whatever. And I'm like, that's a board company. This is a clothing company.
Yes,
You
yeah.
don't have to have the same sponsor for both.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh,
And they
okay.
were like, really? I don't know. You know.
Let me go talk to somebody.
I'll
Yeah.
You can get
I'll
a check
see.
from them and a check from us.
Right.
Yeah, I'll see.
Right.
No, you can
I-
get a box of free products from us at that time.
I want to go back to you moving back to LA from Atlanta after around 93ish. You were saying you moved
In
back
San
to
Diego?
LA.
San
or
Diego.
I'm sorry, I keep saying it's LA. San Diego.
Yeah, the only place
But-
I would consider moving in LA was San Francisco or Encinitas.
Okay. But
And those were the two spots for some reason. Like Encinitas felt like a kind of a small beach town, like where I grew up.
Yeah, yeah,
and then San Francisco was metropolitan, sort of like New York. It was to me like sort of the New York of the West Coast, you know?
I wanted to ask you real quick though, because Jamie Thomas later started American Zero, right? American Zero.
Yeah.
Did he?
I never remembered it being called American Zero.
I
but
think it was
yeah.
just on the board.
Oh, maybe just on the
Yeah,
board.
yeah.
But Zero, and he skated for Zero Sophisto. So I mean,
Yep.
did he ask you if he could
He did,
name
yeah.
the company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
Jamie was one of those creative guys that was always thinking the next thing that he was
Sure.
going to do, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
he did that with his boards and footwear, all these different things that were amazing.
Yeah.
And just an amazing skater. And I remember, you know, he did so much for Sophisto. He's a great guy to work with.
Yeah.
And then he went off to start his board company, and he called me one day and just said, you know, hey, do you mind if I use the name Zero for my skateboard company? Which immediately, without a thought, I was like, yeah, of course, man. Like, that's sick. That's a dope name. You
Yeah.
know?
It's amazing.
So it was it was cool that he called.
I was
going to
say
that.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was a sign of that time period, though. You know,
it's respect.
You had to sort of do that at the time.
Just like the New Deal called the New Deal shop in London to ask permission to use the name.
Yeah, exactly.
It's in a different country.
Yeah,
but it's just a respect.
And it's a little skate shop and all that kind of stuff. But
it's a respect.
Yeah, and one thing for the New Deal skate shop or whatever.
Yeah,
Douglas is one of those guys with the utmost respect for everybody. Like he's one of the guys that will call out whoever did whatever they did, and just be like, everybody needs to know, like, this is the person that did it. He's like very much that way, and I think that's why he's had such a long, history or career in skating, and all aspects of it.
Respect.
He's a monster, man. He literally is like a machine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The emails.
long emails.
I'm sure he got you guys in the web of his email madness.
Yeah. We used to work at Dwindle.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. He was there for what, like 12 years or something?
Yeah. We'd go into meetings, he'd like show up like a stack of paper, just
amazing. Yeah, and we're working with Dwindle on the re-release of these
they're doing
New
the
Deal
first
boards.
series, right?
Yeah. So one of the
amazing.
things, I don't know if we talked about this because it's been so long now we've been talking, but one of the things that I was really hardcore about is we have to do it differently. Mm-hmm. Like if we do a reissue, it can't look like all these other people that are just getting a license or something.
You gotta make them special
and regurgitating. It has to be an experience. It has to be different. But still, we have to try to go back to what we did and re-release those boards because the collectors and the crazy, right? The board collectors out there.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. Like those guys are keeping the history alive too with their collections, the entire 80s or whatever, entire 90s. And so I just said it's got to be a little bit, special.
Sure.
And we talked to Bod because obviously, as you were just saying,
Bod
Douglas
Boyle,
was Bod Boyle, who I think I met when I was probably like 15 or something.
Oh, yeah.
I've known these guys forever, So Steve had worked with them, decided this is the right guy to do it with, and really was the machine behind making all this stuff come together. Yeah. I'm just the art guy, but it was a really cool kind of experience of putting it back together with those guys.
Now, how did you make it special?
Good question.
How did you not make it like the other just releases?
Yeah, so I should follow through and actually tell you what the hell I was talking about. The boards that are the re-releases of the years right now, 1990 to 1992.
Okay.
We talked about, making those things come out the way we did them, like make it look the same measurements. Schmitt can go back and, reverse engineer and remember and he has all these, ways to make it the right thing.
Yeah.
So he went back and recreated all the shapes.
Oh, wow. I'm sure he dug for some molds too and tried to find
he probably did have some molds somewhere. Yeah. And then I got together with Gorm and worked on the graphics. I redrew, like, for instance, with Danny Sargent's graphic, the monkey with the bomb. I took a skateboard. I had his skateboard with the graphic on it from 1990, and I basically traced that in the computer to match exactly, and then outputted it onto paper, and then re-inked it with the same lines for the entire thing. The only thing that we had to take off of it was the shoe, taking the little whippity-woo of the Vans off of the shoe, because apparently nowadays people care about that stuff. But back then we didn't care about it. It's like, dude, he's from SF, he's wearing Vans, that was the thing.
Did you change the bomb too to something else?
No.
The bomb still there?
Yes, we did do something different, but not as part of New Deal. We also, just to finish the New Deal tangent,
yes.
The idea to make it different was to first do this line that is an exact replica and coming out at the exact same time as the original ones, to the closest that we can without copyright infringement or whatever. And
like the timeline, you mean? Like
the timeline, and just revisit the stories, revisit the ads, revisit these kind of things that we did back then, and sort of just do it like we did it back then. But what I said to Steve and Paul was, what if we also reimagine it as what it would be like today if we were creating New Deal, So using the same style of art and the same things that we did, which I feel like are relevant today as probably they were back then, what can we do to flip it? And so staggering, in that way, we'll start to look at different ways to sort of, do it for now. Redrawing graphics, taking things that didn't exist before. One of the things we're doing to launch it is we're doing as mentioned, Shepard Ferry before. He has a gallery here in LA called Subliminal Projects. And, I called him up and said, hey, we're getting ready to do this thing. Like, you want to do something together. And he's one of those kids that kind of came up on this stuff. And so we decided to co-curate an art show at his gallery that would be a combination of a retrospective of the original New Deal art from that time. Like we have like Ed's original graphics and I have my original drawings of the boards from back then.
Right.
And we have a bunch of the stuff. And there are collectors out there that have the stuff, which we've sort of connected with too. So there'll be some art collections from different collectors around the world. And that's like one section of it.
Okay.
And then we started talking about artists who have come up in this time frame after New Deal, who were the little kids skating the boards back then. And so we reached out to a bunch of artists that, everybody basically got excited about doing it, Obviously me and Ed Shepard's doing pieces for it. Dalek, who's an artist from that time period, once was an art director for Duff's back in the day. Skater, ripper, but amazing artist, like studying under Murakami and just absolutely amazing artist. He's going to do some stuff. A range of about 20 artists are going to do reinterpretations of New Deal, either their experience of New Deal or a graphic they liked. Caballero, Steve Caballero is going to do some art too.
Really?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah.
I'd love to get in there, bro. I'll draw you
You're
something.
gonna bust out?
I'll listen, at the end of the show, I'll draw you my little character that I always draw. Maybe
cool.
you could critique it, maybe say yes, maybe say no.
Yeah.
I won't
And then-
if you don't want it.
There was a group. Sorry, I just cut you off, dude. Tell me about your art.
No, I'll show you my art. Trust me.
Tell me.
I'll
It's
show
a
you
stick
after.
figure, yeah.
No, it's a little more than a stick. It's this character I just always draw. I'm horrible at art. But that's
Okay.
but that's what makes it art, though, right? I mean, it's your own interpretation of if it's.
It is. For sure.
But I didn't mean to cut you off, though. Caballero's doing something.
Yeah, Cab's been a guy that, just like I said, inspired me when I was, 15 years old with doing a skate scene and being in the faction and being the skater that he changed the world in skating. He decided at some point I'm going to be an artist, and he started painting and drawing and stuff. And he and I sort of connected on some different art shows that we were in together and collabs with brands that we were in together, stuff like that. And, it's just a good buddy. So it'd be really cool to kind of see what he, what he does to reinterpret it,
Sure.
And I know, and we've also, so all the artists, there's more artists, but we'll kind of let those trickle out over time.
Yeah, of course.
But we're also going to sort of recreate the scene hopefully a little bit and have a little show, a concert by the Odd Numbers. So the Odd Numbers was one of the groups that while I was really on the hip hop tip during that time and getting DJs to help me do the music for my parts in there, the Odd Numbers, the San Jose band that Steve brought in, sort of defined the soundtrack of New Deal videos, and
they're all
so
over that promo.
they're kind of as much of an artist of the brand of New Deal as, we are. And so they're going to come play a show. They're still apparently ripping. I listened to some of the music again and was just like, I freaking love this stuff now. At the time I was not as into that. I liked it, but I liked bands like Dinosaur Jr. and those kind of things at the time. But I was just so into hip hop at that time that it was hard for me to go like, and these guys, it was like, so we're really going to do some stuff with them too. I mean, I think the way that we're going to make it different is we're going to really celebrate the people who are involved in it, the skaters, the artists, the visual artists, as through the Shepard show and everything too at Subliminal Gallery. But then the guys that you didn't really hear from during that time, Gorm. I mean, Josh Friedberg, people came to know later with 411 Video Magazine, but, he was the skater on the team that ended up kind of like getting in the lab and started editing videos once we created that, video magazine.
Crazy.
And so, this is the time when all those things can come to light,
Tell the story.
And it really couldn't happen before, So we sort of created this hashtag My New Deal story to sort of let... And then not just us, because like I could tell you my stories all day long, but like the kid in New Jersey,
Roger can tell you his New Deal story.
Yeah.
You got one?
Got a couple probably.
Digging in the crates.
Yeah.
Listen,
but it's like it's just the time where you can actually tell those things. And I just said we've got to really use the platforms that are available now for us to tell these stories.
Absolutely.
Because the stories, to me, over the last 20 years, and with the onset of even Facebook, and I was on that fairly early, and kind of people would reach out to me and be like, I'm in Tokyo and I'm an animator and I skated New Deal boards and like you really inspired me to do art. I still get those things 30 years later. It's just amazing. Like it literally is so inspiring to me. And so I just said to those guys, I go, that's to me, like the main thing we need to do is to have everybody tell their story about what it meant to them, because to me, I was just sort of, being flown around to the different contests and the demos and in between in the hotel room, drawing the graphics and, stuff like that. But like everybody had their story, and there's so many people, even the people within our group, that were the creators of New Deal have just gone on to do these amazing things. I mean, Jose Gomez, I met him when he was 15. I knew Felix Arguelles because I skated with him in New York, and he was one of those guys like half New York, half Miami.
Yeah.
And I was down south somewhere in Florida doing a demo, and Felix comes up and he goes, I gotta introduce you to this little kid, man. He's a graffiti writer from Miami,
Okay.
And I was in that sort of mode where I was jumping between town to town, and Douglas was out kind of in this ear going like, I need my graphic, and he wanted a graphic of taking his original dog graphic, which was done by a guy named Mick Forster from London, one of his friends, and then doing the next version of it. And I was like, let's do a graffiti version of that. And just things came together. I met Jose. He pulled out his little book and had these characters, and I said, dude, can you draw a dog? Like, draw this graphic. It's a scene of these dogs in a backyard, like I think it was the gang scene type of one or something. And he was like, okay. And Jose went back to Miami and started drawing. I mean, he was 15 years old at the time. I remember when he got his his driver's license. You know what I mean? He was like a little kid. Yeah. And then he ended up leaving high school, moving to Atlanta, being in our little crew of artists, like in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, in basically, painting on walls and all that kind of stuff. And he, his graffiti tag was 0 at that time.
Oh, wow.
What?
Yeah.
Did you ask him permission?
I didn't ask him. No, you didn't ask him. Jose, please, dude, can I use 0? Like, love that name. No, I didn't. I just put that together. I didn't even think about it.
That's funny.
Yeah. He's doing big things now.
His story is amazing because he went with Felix and, over to Miller's camp, and they started Rhythm together.
Yeah.
And then Jose was, I would say, one of the first people to really start to do graphics at the beginning of videos, like the intros of people's parts and like, telling a little bit more of a story with the graphics. And he was a skate kid and doing graphics and board graphics, and he just got hooked on that. And he just started doing more and more video.
Wasn't it the Rhythm
graphics.
video or something that he worked on?
Yeah. That was crazy.
And I was
like
actually
tons and
working
tons
with
of,
those guys
PNG
during
layers.
that time
Yeah.
too. I was doing board graphics for them some of the time during that time. And we all were kind of hanging out together. I mean, Miller's place was on, I think it was Las Palmas Avenue in Carlsbad. So Miller's was here, mine was here, Drawers was here.
Wow.
We were all kind of like see each other, and there's a little bit of cross pollination going on all the time. But Jose just broke out with that stuff. It was amazing. I was trying to do that with Freedom Video. I did a video that was highly graphically intensive, and he was doing that. And then he sort of broke out into, I think where he really had his break was when he did BAM's intro for BAM's show. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the
I just remember a high building with somebody doing a blunt on the edge of a building.
Yeah.
And like
whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think that was his breakout. And then he ended up winning an Emmy at some point.
Yeah.
And
I said he did big things.
Yeah.
And he's got a company called Attack Plan now, which is like doing everybody's commercials, Mercedes, Lego, like, the cool shit you see basically. Yeah. Jose's probably doing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Love that.
So amazing.
That.
And
Mad
that's skateboarding.
Yeah.
Not just New Deal, but like skateboarding, a fucking launch pad for the most creative people coming out of that time frame.
Yeah.
It was like we all ended up doing it because it was the only really creative individual thing you can do, and artists are attracted to doing that kind of stuff, you know. It was amazing.
So I want to go back and talk about, because you left off when you New Deal, and then New Deal, and then you formed Underworld Element.
Okay. Going back to 92.
92, and you moved back to San Diego from
Not
Atlanta.
back, but for the first time I moved to California.
Okay, my bad. Sorry about that.
1993.
Yeah. So what happened with the New Deal thing? Why? Oh, I think you did mention that you wanted to do something new.
Yeah,
After-
I mean,
after
my
3 years.
my lifestyle, all the things that I was into at the time, I would say New Deal, even though it was kind of cutting edge, I guess.
Yeah.
At the time when we started, it was sort of a different vibe than what had been out in the market before that.
Right.
The comparable thing would have been Rocco's World Industries stuff that he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd sort of like set the course for that.
Yeah.
And as setting the course for that, Jose Gomez and, the artists that were involved in it at the time could just sort of keep doing that stuff. And I was around, I think I was around Jose at the time too, so just like, dude, just keep doing what you're doing because it's sick, know. And he ended up leaving and doing rhythm with Felix and then, being involved with audio and all the different things that Chris did with Planet Earth. Yeah. But I just was sort of inspired to go in a little bit of a more urban kind of approach. And like urban sounds weird. That's like a weird word to use now, but like, at the time, I think New Deal resonated with everybody in skating, and then Middle America, and all these far-fetched places in the world that were sort of looking for a fun new kind of thing in skating.
Yeah.
But it had a roof, as far as I was concerned, on how edgy it could get, and how far I could take it. And at that time, I think we figured out I was 22 or 23 years old or whatever, and I was in the height of music and all these things that I was into. It was like explicit lyrics were the a thing, and so this concept started to kind of come to me that what if I was going around the world. I was skating in Tokyo and seeing these sick ass kids there in Paris, with like the kids like Stéphane Laurent's coming up and all these kind of guys. And people were ripping everywhere. Right. For the first time in a while. Like obviously there were rippers everywhere even when I was a kid. But like I think skating and maybe through 411 and the stuff we had done with that video magazine, people could really see how to do all that shit now. So people were just ripping anywhere you go, any city. And I was like, and then I was also, I think, inspired going to New York and hanging out with, Bruno and Rodney. And they had this brand that was a little brand at the time, but it was just influential for us East Coasters because it was like a sort of a cross between, the street art, skateboarding. And it really was sort of encompassing what New York skating was all about, Shut. And I loved Shut. And, I remember meeting those guys, for the first time. I don't remember what the year was, but there was a contest in Ocean City, Maryland. And I mean, we were still yanking airs at that time. So it was like very, very early days. And they all came down and they were just ripping around and skating. And, it was a totally different style and vibe and everything. And, strangely enough, I mean, big inspiration for me in my life that I need to mention, but I met him that day in Ocean City, Maryland, was Ali Ashamor. Okay. And Ali was wearing a white, if I remember correctly, just screaming down the street, doing little shifties and stuff like that. And he was wearing a white T-shirt that with Chet Baker said, "Let's Get Lost," playing the horn, Okay. And I was just like, that's so dope. Like, I love jazz music and, this guy's just super rad, I ended up becoming good friends with Ollie over the years and staying with him in Brooklyn the early days that I went to New York. And just connecting with that whole vibe up there. It was, as I mentioned, Atlanta was just brand new and hadn't really started the scene that it was about to create. And so New York was the spot to kind of just get seasoned, go up and hang out with these guys. And I would stay with Ollie, or I would stay at Jeremy Henderson's house. He had a place on Stanton and Ludlow and Lower East Side next to a bar called Max Fish where all the skaters went. And Alleged Gallery was next door to that, Aaron Rose. And like the scene was just everything, put into this amazing scene. I remember skating around the city with Bruno Musso. Yeah. And like, and stopping off on Mott Street and looking down this little, cellar, and Eli Gessner was down there working on graphics and boards and stuff. They had a wall of boards in there. I was like, these guys are freaking DIY like me. Like this is sick, So I was as equally inspired by traveling around the world as I was with hanging out with my friends in New York and just living that day-to-day life and stuff. And I was just like, I feel like this is happening all over the world. You know, everywhere I go, every city I go in the world, this is happening. And so I was home in Atlanta one time, and I was just like, I really want to find a sick skater in like every city in the world and start like a global urban skate team of these guys that are sort of driven by the same stuff I'm into, like hip hop and skating and, you know, the art and just all these things wrapped together. But it was like the early
Julian
team.
Stranger on there.
The early team was one of my all-time favorite street skaters, Julian Stranger, you know, who was just like is like street skating incarnate to me. You know, when I watch Julian skate, whether it's ripping straight down a hill or ollieing some crazy gap and just tapping his tail carelessly at the end, like, you know, he was one of those guys that inspired me so much in skating. And I met him through Nodis going on like the Cadillac tour when we were all on the East Coast skating. And, you know, I knew Nodis and I knew Thebo was on that tour. I knew Jim. He was sort of like the organizer of the tour. And Julian was on it, and Alan Peterson. Mickey Reyes might have been on there too at some point. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I can't remember. But the photographers were there and, you know, taking pictures and stuff, so it's recorded somewhere. But yeah, Julian, I asked him, I said, I want to start this new thing, dude. I'd like for you to be on it. And like Chris Hall was skating for me for New Deal. So I said, you know, you got to be on this thing. And so, you know, we sort of put together this company that was sort of influenced by the music. You know, Chris was writing graffiti at the time. You know, the DC scene was heavily influenced by that music and the art and all that kind of stuff. So we just started to kind of, you know, pull those people together and turn it into what I called Underworld Element.
Right.
And, you know, at the time I had people working with me in Atlanta, and they were sort of helping get things together, and was sort of like all created over there. At the same time, I had this inspiration for Zero Sophisto, so I started to do that. And those things kind of happened at the same time. I remember going out to Costa Mesa and, you know, kind of like, uh-oh, here he comes again with a crazy idea. I, you know, told Paul and Steve, like, you know, I think I want to do the next stage of what I kind of wanted to push New Deal towards, but it just wouldn't work for that brand now. But I want to do a new name and call it this, you know?
Okay.
And that was right about the time that we were considering doing other brands. And, you know, Justin did Mad Circle after that. And so it sort of became a house of brands, not just New Deal at that point. But yeah, it was a great time. And then I had these influences that ranged from like all the hip hop I'd grown up with, like Public Enemy and Gang Starr and all these kind of things, and then also the graffiti artists that I was hanging out with. So I was asking those guys, can you, like, you know, people who had never done a skate graphic before, like, can you do me a big piece, you know, to go on a skateboard and things like that, and you know, had seen Schmitt do little things like that on their graphics before. So inspired by those guys too, and just started to kind of pull it together. And because I had this reach, you know, that most people didn't have, I was able to sort of reach out to these people around the world and say, hey, you know, come on, skate on this team, film a video part, you know. And invited, and you know, to mention also Jeff Pang at that time, who I just always thought whenever I was in New York was just such a ripper, and was kind of at a stage in his career of skating where he wasn't really skating anymore. I remember when I called him to skate, and I said, dude, will you come skate for this company I'm doing? He's like, I'm doing other stuff now. I'm working, you know, I think he might have been doing electrician work or something like that. You know, I was like, dude, fuck, get back on your skateboard and come down to Atlanta. Like, let's skate for a while, hang out. And he came and lived down there for a little while and skated and you know, kept going, and now he's gone on to do so many great things too. He's an amazing guy. But just a sick skater. I remember he came down and probably hadn't been on a board in a little bit, I don't know, but he just terrorized every spot we went to. He just like ripped it. It was like, oh my god, I'm so glad you're skating right now.
Hell yeah.
You know, so that was really cool. It was a chance to sort of not have any rules again and do it completely different. You know, we knocked off like a Ghetto Boys cover with all of us like this, you know, with our graffiti names instead of our real names and stuff like that.
Sick.
Stuff that I think, you know, was super fun to do. Probably not stuff Julian was into. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, Julian is just skate, you know what I mean? And just amazing. I remember when we decided, I had this idea. Well, one thing, funny Harold Hunter story. Harold used to, trying to think what the scam was, but he had this like these phone cards that he could sort of hijack a payphone, and he would always call me from a different payphone.
Okay.
You know, and he was like, "This is how I call long distance. I got this thing," you know. And I had this idea from talking to Harold of like, man, it's so hard to freaking connect with people, you know, at that time, not having all the stuff that we have today to connect with people. And I was like, if everybody just had a fucking Sky pager, this would be so sick. Like, I could like page them. I think Harold had a pager at the time, you know, so I could like page him, and he would go to a payphone with his like, you know,
calling card things,
fake calling card or whatever he was using at the time, and call me and catch up with me or whatever. And, you know, Harold had gotten on the team, and we started to kind of get this really nice crew of people together. So I came up with this idea to do Sky Pager, and I was like, maybe what I'll do is I'll buy Sky Pagers for everybody. 'Cause then I know I can get in touch with them if they have a Sky Pager. And then I'll send them out to everybody and just say, hey, whatever you want to do, start your video part with something that has to do with the Sky Pager, you know?
Right.
And I sat in a hot tub with my girlfriend at the time, and like,
I was
you know,
wondering
got
who that
called
is.
and beeped and like, yeah, no, I can't do that, you know? And I remember Julian was sitting on the side of the road, and he like got a call, pulled it out of his pocket, you know, Pang, of course, being funny as hell, like had like pagers around his hat and was doing, you know, it turned out to be super fun, you know? Yeah, so that, and then we did that video, and I thought that was like a real departure from what was happening in skating at the time. It's just super fun to do that. I think when we did before that, Chris Ortiz, who was also like a big part of what we did with New Deal and even what I was doing with Underworld Element and Element, he was the guy that would just hang with us and would shoot everybody, you know, video and shoot photos, and it didn't happen if you didn't get that stuff on video. So I would I had him come out to Atlanta when we first started, and then had Julian come out, Pang was down there, Chris Hall, Rick Ibaceta, and Ortiz, and we got a van. We rented a van and just cruised around the Southeast. And I think I had this this book, Poor Man's James Bond, and which is is not relevant now by any means with all the crazy stuff that's happened in the world, but we were trying to, you know, mess with like light bulbs and like make them explode and things like that. And we made some of that stuff and like went around and just did crazy stuff and explosions and, you know, but had some amazing skate, you know, sessions as well.
Yeah.
Speaking of Julian, there was one scene where one time when we were in Florida, and I don't remember where this place is. You guys are historians.
The brick quarter pipes?
Those crazy brick quarter pipes, like on the side of like a mall or something. And we got out there at like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or something, and Ortiz drove the van, I think, and Julian held onto the side of the van and got going about 30 miles an hour so he could get as far up on the wall as he could to do a frontside ollie. And I don't know if we got the video of him making a big frontside ollie on it. I think he did some, but it was just insane. He went beyond, you know, what we thought was possible.
Sure.
And you had to ollie a curb right before you got there. So it was just like, he ollied probably like 5 feet before the curb or something up onto it, and then tried to ollie over these doors on this thing. It was sick.
Amazing.
And I at that point I sort of had been starting to try to skate switch stance too, and that was, I think, novel. I ran into Solomon Aga yesterday.
Switch God.
Switch guy, and I was like, he was the only guy that was pushing that I felt like, yes, dude, like, you know, you can skate backward. I called it skating backwards that time. You can skate backwards, you know.
Did you show him a nose ollie?
I didn't know. he did those, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know who did that stuff first at all,
yeah.
but like, you know, Solomon was the guy that always inspired me and always pushed me forward on that stuff.
Yeah.
Amazing guy. And it was cool to run into him. And but during that time of traveling, which was when we decided to start the company, 92, I remember saying, what I'm going to do for this video part, whatever we do with Underworld Element, I'm going to do the whole part switch stance. And so almost I think there might have been a couple things, but almost everything in the part was switch stance. And when it came out, people were like, dude, Howell's falling off.
They didn't realize
he's going slow and like he's not really ollieing anymore. You know?
He looks weird.
He looks weird, but people I think got it after a while. I had kind of, you know, slid a handrail and done, you know, nollies up to stuff and 180 nollies and, you know, switch shove-its and things like that. switch nose bumps, like things at the time that I felt were sort of innovative in some way.
Right.
So it's hard to know, who did things first back then because it was so spread out.
Sure.
But it was stuff that I was always, at least for the competition with myself in my own head, I was always trying to push to do the next thing. I wouldn't do a part where I was like, okay, the compulsory this, that, or the other,
Mm-hmm. So they kept New Deal going, and then you went off and started your own, another. Did you ever feel like you were abandoning New Deal with starting your own? No?
I thought it was bringing a freshness to the whole group.
Okay.
Plus, you're all under the same roof.
If you
still.
go back,
you're under the same roof, true.
The founders of this company were me, Paul, and Steve.
Uh-huh.
And so we all owned this giant distribution as it came to be known,
right.
And so,
you're helping
this
out.
was just one of the brands, I was like, this can be a suite of brands. All these guys, New Deal's getting huge. The team was, I don't even remember how big the team was
Armando
at that point.
Barajas?
Total Ripper, but I mean, some of the guys I never even met before they came out on the video,
Okay.
and I was like, that's big. It's getting so big. So it was just, some of us had to kind of depart and do our thing, and Justin did the
Interesting.
same thing,
Yeah.
but that's what happens
Yeah.
with the skaters. You keep going for a while, and then it gets stale, or it gets to the point where your part of it's done,
Sure.
and then you move on,
Okay.
and New Deal had some other iterations that ended up being pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like The Deal is Dead, and different videos. I guess everything's kind of
Whatever was
predicated on videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then by '95 I was retired and I was not part of it anymore. I kind of went off in a completely different direction.
You
at that
just
point.
you said no more.
Yeah, I just dropped it and left. I mean, it was kind of weird because people came back to me later and were just like, dude, whatever happened to you? Like that whatever happened to thing that people do.
Sure.
It's I was that guy. I was a whatever happened to. I just disappeared. And sort of just, I had some beef, which we've talked about, off camera, but like,
Internally.
yeah, there was internal things that happened where I really didn't feel good about what was going on. And like, same with Steve and Paul. And, I just decided, hey, my body's so broken from skating right now. Like, I'm just going to focus on art,
How old were you in '95? When did you leave?
Where's the math guy?
You
over
were born
here.
in '68, so '95. Were you 35? No, wait, 45?
45.
That would have been sick.
I
if
know,
skated to
right?
45.
Wait, I'm like not even. I don't know.
Let me get my
78,
abacus.
80.
27.
Let's just call it 27.
Yeah.
So you're late 20s.
Viewers out there, 500 viewers, 5,000 viewers have already figured out like what this age thing is.
And they've already
like,
commented, idiots.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Damn.
We're just
Shot
skaters. We're just
myself in the
skaters,
foot on
bro.
that one.
We're just skaters.
Yeah.
So, 30 years, pushing 30, you know, I can understand.
Which when you look at people like Tony and Caballero nowadays,
Oh
that,
my
that ain't
God.
shit.
It ain't
you know?
shit. No.
But I was sort of in that spot where I was like, focused. I was into other stuff.
Yeah.
I was into music. I was into art. I feel like I'm an artist first and foremost, and skating's been one of those paintbrushes in the toolbox. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's one of the things I'm so thankful to have been able to have the experiences I had, but I've got other things also that I'm interested in doing. And so I kind of continued in that direction of, making music and doing stuff with friends and
Art,
doing videos.
tech worlds, I mean-
I was still in apparel. I didn't
yeah.
leave skateboarding at the time I left New Deal.
Okay.
But, ended up starting the design firm with Shepard Ferry and
Yeah.
Dave Kinsey, which was called First Bureau of Imagery. And we did a lot of the artwork within the ASR trade show, like
Yeah.
for skate companies and, snowboarding and things like that. And then went on to do another agency with that was called ImageWorks with a guy named Greg DeLeo, who was lifetime friends with and partners with for a while. And he had done similar things that I had done in skating, in snowboarding.
Okay.
Was, Peter Line was a very famous snowboarder. He was the guy that sort of groomed up Peter Line as an AM and turned him pro and started Division 23 snowboards and was one of the founders at Forum Snowboards. And so very much, mirror image of what I had done. And we were surfing together. And we would sort of talk out in the water about what was going on in skating. And, he was an old punk kid from Boston, actually.
Right.
Some of the early punk stuff, like he was at all of those early punk shows. And like he was the little skate kid doing flips off the speakers. And we were like, God, it's going to be like fucking hula hoops again with these things coming in and, television's coming in, and there's going to be this thing called the X Games, and all this stuff. And as like kids that grew up in this stuff, we had seen in the early 80s, banks and automotive companies come in and sprinkle their little bits of marketing dollars in and like puff everything up and then falls flat. So we're like, somebody's got to do something that's legitimate and authentic, because the money's coming in anyway. Somebody's got to help make sure that stuff is legit. And so we started ImageWorks as sort of that solution in the spare bedroom of my house. And,
it's amazing.
And we, over a period of 3 weeks after deciding to do it, we created a logo and a name and, basically put our portfolios together of things we had done, similar to what Shepard and Kinsey and I did from, the Giant and the New Deal and the DC stuff that all we had done back then. And it was just like, we sort of, targeted the top companies within all the industries related to action sports, and kind of went out and were in the right place at the right time, kind of yet again of seeing that as something that was getting ready to happen. Within the first couple weeks, we had landed K2 Snowboards as like the first client.
Wow.
Transworld, all the Transworld magazines. So advertising was coming into the Transworld magazines, and but their individual circulations were so small on those magazines that they were like, we don't know what to do. And we said, well, why don't you package everything together as one thing and then advertise that in the mainstream media to the advertising agencies and whatnot. So we ended up doing that, and then Ford and all these other things started coming in.
Crazy.
Wow.
So helped that in that way, in something that was, as a hardcore skate kid of the 80s, it was unfortunate that was getting ready to happen, but also we could see how inevitable it was.
Yeah.
And so it could either fall flat again, or luckily because of having people like Tony and these other guys that were now CEOs of companies, it was so much less likely to happen.
Right.
But, over that period, we helped launch Xbox. We did the first promotional launches for Scion when that car came out.
Oh, Skyline.
Skyhawk.
Yeah, so Toyota, Microsoft, it was like the big companies that were ready to appropriate this youth culture. What
I mean, bro, you must have been making a nice little paycheck over there. These are big brands.
It was good. Yeah, we ended up out of the blue. A guy came. For some reason, it looked cool what we were doing, so they put it into the local business magazines and things like that. Funny stuff, but picture of me and Greg and saying like "add firm skates to youth marketing" or something. Like novel at that time.
Sure.
And this guy named Mark Dowley, who had been a big promotional guy, done things like Sheryl Crow playing Central Park and Tiger Woods playing golf through Hyde Park in London, and like these big kind of things, like, came to our little tiny shop. I think Steve Size was with us at that time too. So Size was a great designer.
Yeah,
we worked together on lots of stuff. It was a good old buddy of mine. It was me, Greg, Steve Size, a guy named Scott Holgren who has his own agency now, and a few people in and out. A guy named Randall Sargent, and we just had this great little group of people that were designers and kind of knew what was going on. So we didn't have to interpret our culture for anybody. We were just sit in a room and go, oh yeah, let's do something like what we did for this, and kind of tweak this or whatever. And we had also just landed Activision, so we had started doing all the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games. I think after game 2. We did everything after that into sort of underground and stuff. So we did the logos and the ad campaigns and, everything for that branding. And so we'd pretty much gotten to all those people that we wanted to get to in each industry, and had done, one of the projects that we did was a Happy Meal for McDonald's. Do you remember fingerboards in a Happy Meal?
No. Roger?
I remember that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Still getting Happy Meals at this age?
It was
Raj.
Every Sunday morning.
one of the places where I snuck in my graffiti tag from Atlanta
was in a McDonald's?
into the stickers in the McDonald's.
Yes.
No way.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Crazy. And it doesn't even sound that crazy now, like it's like, oh yeah, somebody just did that for McDonald's just yesterday or whatever. But back then it was like a skate kid doing like a Happy Meal for McDonald's. Like that doesn't make any sense, But I can try to remember the stats, but I think 70 2 million Happy Meals in 4 weeks were distributed with my artwork on it, you know? So it was my first taste of like, this is how big doing this little sketch, like what I'm just doing on this book right now, could get out to the world.
So crazy.
You know? So that was pretty, you know, as somebody who went to art school before I turned pro for skating, it was like, as an artist, that was a big accomplishment for me commercially. Yeah. But it also just gave me I think it was the number 10 Happy Meal of all time at the time. And then number 1 in New Zealand and Australia.
No way.
Yeah. So it beat out all those Inspector Gadgets and all the movies of the day and all that stuff. You know?
And plus, you snuck in your own little tags in there.
Yeah, and my friends' tags.
And your friends' tags.
All the Atlanta dudes. You know?
Hey?
Wow,
so that was great.
I want to get into all the tech stuff because you did a lot of
but you want to go back to skating first.
Well,
let's keep this about skating.
Well, I want to ask about...
There's life after skating, though.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, whatever happened to...
The tech stuff is super interesting to me, and I want to talk about that. But also the New Deal stuff. Also, I was going to ask you. Were you with Underworld Element when it turned into Element?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my choice, my brand.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think I might have said this before. I don't know, but like, you know, as the founder of Underworld Element and then later Element, which we created. If you go back and kind of look in, you can sort of see that change happen around the time of Peppy and Andy Stone and Billy Pepper and the Fine Artists Volume 1 video, and you know, everything was Element branding. Not the branding that we have today for that brand and out in the marketplace. But that's kind of a misconception I think the world may have at this point due to like a high amount of propaganda that's out there. But really, and I don't even want to claim it just for myself. You know, me, Paul Schmitt, and Steve Douglas, the founders of New Deal, were also the founders of Underworld Element and Element and 411 and, you know, those brands.
Right, okay.
But we, you know, I share that credit with them, you know, first and foremost, because those guys were the guys that helped me do what I did. A lot of times I would have these crazy ideas like I just described to you, but you know, it couldn't have ever happened without those guys. Yeah. It wasn't until much later in my life that I actually learned how to found, create, fund, and run a company. That took a few falling on the face, you know?
Yeah.
But a few times of falling on my face. But yeah, you know, it's not the popular knowledge about that is probably, you know, something is totally incorrect and shouldn't have been put out there.
Well, I know you said you wanted
without going deep on any kind of bone picking.
Well, yeah, no, because I know you said you wanted to keep this very positive.
Yeah, I do.
And I respect that totally.
Because I mean, this is a positive thing.
Yeah,
this is amazing having the chance to get on here and share, you know, stories that I'm so passionate about, you know, not just, you know, the whack shit that happened along the way.
And you're drawing a photo of me or a picture of me in the book.
Yeah, you're starting to spit now.
Oh, wow.
Huh, okay. Maybe you should draw some flies around the mouth or something. Like some. No. He did draw. Okay. Oh, he's drawing something here. What is this?
One fly to start.
Okay. But I was going to ask you about the New Deal stuff because you said you're going in a chronological order kind of with the board releases and stuff, like the timeline.
Let's just say more or less that's the plan.
That's a plan.
Yeah.
Now, are you guys going to keep New Deal around after you guys finish with this timeline? Is there a plan for New Deal after this 30th anniversary? What are you guys going to do with it?
Let's see. I mean, you know, I think... I mean, I just described to you some of the things like New Deal and Underworld Element and Sophisto and all these different things.
Yeah.
Like, I have no shortage of ideas of ways to push things forward.
I gathered that.
Especially with these guys and kind of where, you know, Paul is now and Steve is now. You know, Steve's been a huge part of the industry for a long time.
Yeah.
It's great coming back to it with a new, fresh set of eyes and being able to bring into it maybe not only the art, which I'm still love and I'm passionate about doing. I've always painted and drawn and made art and, you know, gone off on that as a career for a while too.
Yeah.
But to me, it's relevant today. Maybe I'm speaking to an audience of one, but like I'm seeing, you know, people starting to share those stories and like reach out to me and go like, dude, this is fucking awesome that you guys are doing this, you know? And maybe they're just expecting that it's going to look like all those other reissues that are out there. But what I hope, and Gorm and I in late night, you know, sessions of just brainstorming about stuff of what we'd like to see out there, I hope we'll be able to bring something new to it. And if it sparks and it catches on, then hey, yeah, we can spend some more time on pushing it forward. You know, it'd be cool to see what kind of new skaters it might attract too, you know, like if it does, you know what I mean?
Right. So you're just going to you're just going to kind of go with the flow. You're going to kind of see what happens.
I feel
no
like
master plan.
A master plan to do these reissues and then do, as I think I mentioned before, some reinterpretations and those kind of things. Like some of the artists that I'm inspired by and I love that didn't get a chance to do a graphic because they might have been too young at that time, but now they're doing some amazing stuff. Like I'd love to see what it might look like through their eyes.
Okay.
Gorm is one of the unsung heroes of kind of the whole New Deal era, and he's a sick artist who's been working in the industry for a long time too. So a lot of it I want to also kind of say to him, you know, what is it you want to do? And like that's one of the things I feel in my life I've had the opportunity to do over and over again, and it's always rewarded me, not just, you know, in success monetarily or whatever it might be, but just in the success of being part of that circle of inspiration, of helping drive creativity forward. You know, like, hey, Gorm, here's a platform. Jose, if you can take a break and like draw some graphics. He's doing a piece of art for the art show.
That's great.
I bet he'll do stuff. You know what I mean? It's like this is a part of our lives. You know?
I love it, man.
So it'll be cool to see how that comes back around.
Yeah. Well, hey, I want to thank you for the shirts, bro. We're on the team.
Awesome. You guys
It says
are.
it on the shirt. We're on the team.
Hell yeah.
I can't deny it. And you guys are the first ones to get these too.
Are we?
I actually,
That
yeah.
is
These
so
hot off the
cool.
press. Oh,
Yeah, and you said you were going
I can smell
to
the,
Street League, right?
I'll wear it out there.
Oh shit, dude. That would be sick. I also sent them to Steve and Paul, who are going to be out there, and then
dope.
one to Gorm too. I don't think Gorm's coming to that contest, but you know, he'll be the first to get them besides you guys. So.
Sick.
Wow.
Dude, thank you
Guys,
so
are you
much.
making any 775 boards? Maybe Kelly can ride one.
There's Paul's doing the shapes. He's pulling some good
He
shapes
makes
together.
good boards, dude.
He does.
I
He
really
does.
like
He's a
his
professor.
Yeah.
He's the professor.
Yeah,
I
dude.
mean, there's just the whole stories to tell about him too. But like,
I'm sure, man.
amazing.
Yeah.
You know, what a great entity for skating. Like with Creative Skate, I'm sure you guys follow it. You know, one of the most important things. And now I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, and my son and my daughter are really into music right now. Like my daughter's playing guitar, my son's singing,
amazing.
and like, you know, they're doing amazing creative stuff. Like my son's drawing manga right now. He's super into manga characters and you know, animation type stuff. They're just awesome. We've always had art, and think my wife's an artist and a designer, and just
runs in
you
the
know,
family.
we have it
Yeah.
all the time around us.
Right.
There's something creative happening all the time.
Huh.
Yeah, like I've got one of my son writes music. He's 12.
Really?
He's written. He's already sung lead vocals at the Troubadour and the Roxy. He's had shows.
What?
So he goes
You
to
can't
school.
even
he
go
goes,
drink there. Was he
Yeah.
singing?
he goes to School of Rock.
Wow,
School
yeah?
of Rock on Wilshire.
no
yeah.
way.
Oh,
Yeah, so he's got a teacher
Jack Black
who's
yeah, with Jack Black.
he's not there. But yeah, when did anybody have the same experience I did? When I saw that movie, I thought that was insane. Like how amazing would it be if there was something like that? And there
Seriously,
happens
yeah.
to be, you know.
It's crazy.
So yeah, he sang. His name's True. Hey, True.
True.
Yeah. Yeah, my daughter's name's Love. So
True love.
No
Yeah,
way.
look at
That's
that.
so cool.
yeah, they're both amazing. Like, you know, having kids, having gone through the process, and my wife Ginger, who's absolutely amazing. I fell in love with her at first sight.
Oh wow.
And married her 7 weeks later. We've been together for
You married after 7 weeks. You
13
married.
and a half years we've been married. Yeah.
Damn.
It was true love.
7 weeks. You married. You how long did you propose after you met her?
The night I met her, I would have married her.
Seriously.
Yeah. And then we just organically decided to get married. We were in Sydney. I was at a speaking engagement with a company called Refill.
Okay.
That was a creative one. It was like me and Neckface and Cartoon and
Sick.
Esteban and a bunch of different people got invited down there.
Wow.
And talking about, you know, whatever creative type stuff. And 7 weeks after we met, and we
That's
just
crazy.
I was like, we actually had what I feel like is the actual experience of saying your vows. You know, like I do think getting married in a formal wedding environment is a great way to get married. But we had this organic wedding we were staying in this hotel called the Medusa in an area called Darlinghurst. It's a beautiful area of Sydney. And we just woke up and we were just looking into each other's eyes and didn't look away for probably like 6 hours or so.
And we were just
blinked first?
We were just talking. We weren't staring. We were just looking.
Yeah.
We were in this kind of zone, this
Sure,
close for
yeah.
that time. And we never got out of bed. We
No
were just
bathroom breaks?
talking to each other. I'm sure we used the bathroom.
Okay.
But there was a waterfall outside in the courtyard that was coming down. So it was just this beautiful environment. The doors were open, and we just sort of broke down like all of our fears in our life, all of our loves, our aspirations, everything that happened. And like, I was pledging myself to her and she was pledging herself to me. And it just sort of organically happened.
Wow, you had a moment.
It was a long moment.
Yeah.
And during that time, I think at the end of that time, I said, I want you to be my wife. And she said, I already am.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And we were married. It was
That's amazing.
absolutely incredible. And then when we
Crazy.
came home, the family said, "Oh, yeah, you're not really married. You got to do the real thing." And we, of course, did that. But
Yeah.
it was like.
But that's just a piece of paper.
But I was pissed when I got home, and people were like, "You don't understand." I was like, "You don't understand.
Yeah.
What I just went
Right.
through. Like
Right.
there is true love.
Yeah.
There is. This exists. This actually happens, and it happened.
You
to
don't
me.
need a piece of paper to tell you that.
Yeah, but you know what? It's strange that like the older generation, the parents, and everybody else, and even the
Traditional.
friends are
Yeah.
like, yeah, that kind of, I know you're creative and weird, and that probably didn't happen. But I was just like, you don't take this away from me.
Yeah,
This is it was
for sure.
it was, and I think I've had some magic moments in my life.
There you
It was
go.
it was the magic moment of my life.
Wow.
Meeting her, the first moment we actually looked into each other's eyes. That was the magic moment. And then after that was the day that we got married.
That's
And then after
amazing.
that, my kids being born.
Wow. I think
Yeah.
Roger and Kelly have had that moment before.
We should do it right here.
With each other. Raj looked at me like I was fucking crazy. Listen, I want to. We're going to wrap this up soon. This has been incredible, but I do want to talk about the tech stuff because that interests me a lot.
Okay.
I love tech,
Oh,
and
Chris
every time
loves his tech
every
stuff.
time I get a new little gadget or anything, I tried to learn how to build apps for a while. Like it was just too complicated for me. It was like learning another language. It was fucking insane.
Yep.
But you guys, you created an app, right?
Yep. It's a few different technology.
Few
type
different
of things. Yeah.
okay, but a makeup app, right?
Yeah.
You did a makeup app. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
where you could
you skipped a lot of stuff that got me there because that sounds out of like you did a makeup app, like you know.
no, I mean if you have an idea, to me that's like, oh, here's an idea you could do.
Yeah.
What did I skip?
Well, I've never been confined to thinking that there's one certain thing I have to do. We started talking about why did you bounce out of skating
Sure.
and do other stuff. It's like I've never felt like I needed to be confined to anything
Okay.
because I always felt all the different creative ideas and things that come to me have value, and I can nurture those and turn them into something or let them pass by or put them in a file somewhere and come back
Gotcha.
to them. From skating went on to doing the ad agency,
Mm-hmm.
then before there were kind of pop-ups and things like that, I did capsule collections, like little brands for a bunch of major retailers.
Okay.
Kind of the circle from to being, the skater where I was sort of the endorser of products to being the brand guy with New Deal and Element and those things. And then having an ad agency was sort of marketing the stuff that the brand creators were doing. I've sort of had this holistic
Yeah.
experience with, the creative
All
industry.
angles.
And then on to creating brands again, but like smaller capsule type of brands, like the first home stuff for Urban Outfitters
Oh.
and full chain distribution of products with the Apple Store with iPhone cases and just like different stuff that's come to me over the time.
Okay.
And during that time, the art thing was happening. I mean, the career that I've had in art has gone in and out, and I've had different times where it's been big, but during 2000, 98 to probably 2008, that was 10 years. I probably was in, probably 50 group shows, and I had, a dozen kind of solos, and I was in a museum retrospective of my art in Buenos Aires in a museum there. And, was had like an interview and the cover of Juxtapose magazine, so like the other part of my life, I got to experience that too.
Yeah.
And really see the transition of sort of the street art graffiti stuff into contemporary art movement, and so that was super inspiring to me. During that time, people would reach out to me on Facebook and say, man, I just got out of art school. I don't know what to do. Like they don't teach you art. They don't teach you the business of art in art,
Right.
like what do you do,
Yeah.
So I had a friend that was a museum curator and another that was an appraiser for Christie's, and I reached out to them and I said, like, what would you do if you would put something together to kind of help young artists like get traction out there in the world? Like it's hard to come out of art school, and especially now it's a massive like group of artists that are just emerging from schools all the time, and especially in this world we live in of what I would say is sort of a neo-contemporary art movement, the new contemporary movement. And I don't know if that's the right terminology for it, but that's what I call it. But I was doing similar stuff to skating, traveling around the world, painting murals, doing art shows in France and all around the world, really similar to skating. And so I created this platform called Arts Project, and it basically was a way to help young artists sort of get traction, get noticed, collaborate with brands or collaborate with musicians or things like that to kind of do different stuff, limited edition art prints and different kinds of products, and give them some knowledge about how business works and things like that. And I just, as an entrepreneur my whole life, the art of being an entrepreneur has just been just as much like learning a skate trick to me. It's like, continuing to build on top of what I learned and keep going up and doing different things. Some guys reached out to me almost out of the blue, and I'd sort of felt like I missed the tech world because I think skating in the 90s didn't really latch on to the World Wide Web as like a vehicle and a place that they could do business and stuff. It took until way into the 2000s to get to that point. So I felt like I kind of missed it. And these guys reached out to me from a company called Zazzle, based up in the Bay Area. And they were basically two kids from Stanford that decided that they wanted to print some T-shirts for their fraternity, and they couldn't get them printed in time. So they bought a digital printer and they started direct garment printing onto T-shirts. And they're like, we could do this. We could print on anything. Their dad had been successful in like chip manufacturing, like in the 80s or something. So he funded them, and they started this company, which has grown to be really big and
still around.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's quite big now. But it's not artistically driven as it was when they connected with me. So they reached out to me and said, like, hey, could you put your art first? They said your art on it. And I said, what if we build this into a whole platform that artists could come on?
There you go.
And they could design, like the chief scientist, a guy named Young Harville, was one of the guys that with Jaron Lanier created virtual reality back in the 80s. He wrote this, software to basically virtualize products that didn't exist. You could upload a photo or a graphic or whatever and wrap it onto a pair of shoes or these different kinds of things. And then they would manufacture it one at a time. So on-demand printing, but to the nth degree.
Sure.
And I immediately saw like, oh my God, this is like the promise that every artist would be able to use if they can build their brand on that platform. So over a period of a few years, they ended up acquiring this Arts Project platform that I was creating. And over a period of a few years, we had 1,500 artists, designers from around the world. And I would curate them similar to like curating an art show or something. Send in your artwork to us, your story and stuff like that. And, if if your art fits in with what we're doing, we'll let you build a store on it. So we did that, had about 1,500 artists. I mean, designers from all over the world, visual artists, fine artists, graphic artists. Clive Barker, who was one of the guys that he wrote Hellraiser, if you remember that movie.
Of course.
A great, horror writer, but also an artist and a painter. He designed all those characters and stuff. Like he applied to that platform. An artist from Ferragamo, who was the illustrator for Ferragamo, applied to that platform. Like all these different people kind of, it was an interesting thing happening at a time when there was no outlet for it, So it was a super exciting time. I got to meet all the artists I knew from skating and street art and all these different things. I got to meet a whole new web of artists. And so I was combining, these people were just, I have a lot of contact with a lot of those kind of artists, it's great being someone who loves art so much. It's been a part of my life. And while I was there, I ended up meeting another guy who had done the customization programs for the bags for Nike ID and the Reebok and Timberland custom shoe programs and things like that. And was just a cool cat that I liked, and we ended up connecting, and he and I sort of became,
tag teams to go out and sort of bring brands, because one side was the artists on the platform, the other side was brands on the platform.
Yeah,
so we did collaborations with Skull Candy.
Okay. Yeah, we got your headphones on right there.
Yeah, and we did a few of those. We did.
Those are you designed those headphones.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
His name's on 'em.
it's my art.
He's got his name on his headphones.
My art, and then Mixmaster Mike designed the actual headphones.
Oh, sick.
So,
Okay.
yeah, super
Sick.
cool.
Yeah.
Collaboration.
Looks
I mean,
good.
lots of collaborations,
Sure.
and sort of that was my model for helping build that platform was to collaborate with brands. We did collabs with Spec. Which is an iPhone case manufacturer, Levi's, Skull Candy.
Oh.
We actually did the first Stance collection. So when Stance came out, I was actually in Vegas at the CES, Consumer Electronics Show.
Mm-hmm.
We were launching the Arts Project and Spec iPhone case thing, and I had amazing artists on the platform. Jim Mahfood, he's a comic artist, has done so many amazing comic books and stuff. He's a super sick guy. Great artist. Had him and me painting on canvases that were shaped like iPhone cases.
Okay.
And we basically said to people walking around that came in to see what we were doing, and it was, consumer electronics buyers like Best Buy and Apple and things like that would come in. It was a trade show for electronics.
Yeah.
We said, this is a live platform where we don't know what the designs are going to be tomorrow, because we have 1,500 artists from around the world who are, designers for Nike, designers for all these different brands, but yet they are, creating their passion projects on the side at night, moonlighting, and we don't know what designs are going to be here. So Apple came in and they loved it, and they said, can we do this and, put it into different areas of the US and things like that, which we ended up doing with them, which was great. And then Wired magazine came by and said, this is sick. It was I think a writer named Annalisa Savage, who's like an old punk rocker, and she was a writer for Wired. She came by and interviewed us and talked to us about it. And it was one of those things that stood out.
Yeah, of course.
So Jeff Curl, who was the guy who had been the executive chairman for Skull Candy, and he stopped by the booth, and he's a tech guy and also lives in the action sports world now. And he came by and he said, hey, I want to talk to you, man. I've got this thing I want to show you. And I was like, cool. Well, I just got invited to this Wired party. Like, let's jump in a cab and, ride over there. So in the cab on the way over to the party, he flips open his laptop, like classic tech style. I'm going to show you my deck, at any given moment. And he starts flipping through this thing. And the first thing I see is one of my paintings on a sock. And I'm like, dude, that's my artwork on your sock you're pitching me right now, And he was just like, what? He goes, no, it's not. I'm like, yeah, it is. He goes, yeah, my artist did that, so I don't know where it came from. And I had just had an interview in Juxtapose, and the cover art for Juxtapose was a painting I did of my wife shooting a gun, and that was on the silhouette of a sock, And he was telling me the story behind it of why he did it and, all that stuff. And basically what they did with Skull Candy, creating a new category within action sports and all that kind of stuff, is people have white socks. I'm going to do a sock company. So it was just cool. There was even though outside of skating at that time, it just still got woven together,
Man, it seems like whatever you touch turns to gold.
He's
bro.
like the most
I
interesting.
hope that.
I wouldn't say gold, but
Listen, man.
He's like the
I've
most,
had a lot of opportunities.
you're like the most interesting man in the world. Like the Dos Equis dude, man.
I probably look like that too. Oh my god.
No, but it's just super. I mean,
but that's how I got into the tech world.
Sure.
Art led me into let's form a platform for these artists. And while I was there, I became friends with Young and Dave, and then I left Zazzle and was starting to incubate new ideas for things I wanted to do at the different concepts. People, especially in tech, there's a lot of different concepts that are being sort of what they call a minimum viable product, or lean sort of development. You sort of do a little bit to get to a point where someone could imagine what this thing's going to do. And this continues to change. Now it started like that, and now it's like you get something that has traction in the market, and then you go out and raise money on it. So I learned a lot about the VC world and everything related to the tech world when I was at this company, because it was one of those juggernaut kind of companies that was in Silicon Valley. And We were around, Facebook was around the corner, and the other places were all around there. So it was cool to be sort of in that during that time. But I stood out like a sore thumb because I was a skate kid with a backpack and a mohawk and stuff, and it was just like, oh yeah, there's that guy again, But I ended up meeting a lot of people and going through the process of raising money and doing that kind of stuff. It was really cool. I mean, I have now come around that full circle to being able to come up with a concept, build a team, iterate that concept, get it to a point where it's got traction, go out and raise money on it, take it to a scale in the market, and then have it acquired by another company and then integrate it into that. So from Zazzle, traveling around the world talking to everybody from Vans to Gucci to Daimler about smart cars, like all these different things that could be customized. You know what I mean? We got to the point where we were like, we could really customize anything. I think we did 200 different customizable products on that platform.
Crazy.
And I was the brand guy, and then Dave did a lot of the product stuff, and then Young, and I'm talking about 3 guys, but there's 175 people at that company.
Yeah.
But we were sort of in that circle of the founders and those folks like doing most of it. And I ended up leaving, just starting to think of new ideas. I could customize anything. Like, what would it be? I thought about skating. I thought about shoes. I thought about hard goods. I thought about the clothing.
Yeah.
Even aftermarket auto parts. Like I had done the stuff with Toyota and Scion. I went back and talked to them and said, what would you think if somebody had a platform you could customize, auto parts online? A lot of tooling time to get there.
Sure. Get your artwork on a muffler.
So it was we had done it on a skateboard and a messenger bag. And we were like, we could do it on anything.
Right.
And long story short, my buddy the guy Dave was making bath bombs with his daughter. And we were going in, talking to different people and stuff at this point, and we had sort of the concept sort of coming together. And he was like, I keep doing this thing in my garage. My daughter loves these like bath things that fizz,
Throw them in the bathtub. Yeah.
And he's like, but they cost so much. He's like, I just figured out how to make them with a bucket, And so my daughter and I made them. He's like, couldn't we just make anything? And we were talking about, makeup. And we talked about skincare because we were saying, like, what would be a cool thing that you could customize? Like, if someone had skin conditions, my skin conditions are different than yours and different than yours.
Skin tones also.
Can't you make something that's perfect for me that will actually care for me the right way? And, what technology would you need in order to figure that out and then, do that?
Yeah.
We came around and it came back to, let's create basically what's called a colorimeter. Let's turn the iPhone into a color scanner that can be color correct in any environment except for being outside in the light.
Okay.
And then let's use it to scan women's skin tone. Yeah. And then let's build makeup that matches that woman's skin tone.
Yeah.
So we found some statistics in the industry of like 94% of women were not wearing the right foundation shade.
Yeah, right.
Was found out, and then 33 or 30, I forget the percentage exactly, 33% of women said they've never found something that was the right match for them.
Right.
Things like that. It's a big world of like going into anywhere, any kind of store and having 1,000 different choices.
Yeah. And you discovered the problem.
How do you figure that out?
There's a problem.
So that problem was really a good problem we found. We were 2 middle-aged guys that had nothing to do with makeup. Thank goodness we had wives that cared about makeup. So we're like, would that be kind of good? Yeah, that would be cool if you did that. So
it's a big market.
Early on, we sort of thought that could be a good idea. And then we made a little deck. We went out to VCs. We went to a female VC because we're like, this woman VC will probably know, more about this than we do. Mm-hmm. And she said, I don't use makeup that much. I don't know anything about the market, but let me introduce you to this guy that was one of the first employees at Sephora. He's a friend of mine, and you can go meet him. And I remember going to meet the guy, and I look like this, and he was like well manicured, this like Egyptian guy, middle-aged guy, like just, nice looking man.
Yeah.
Kind of looking across the table at these kids that came in with the backpack saying like, we want to meet you and tell you the story.
Right.
And over a period of about 5 minutes, we said to him, hey, we have this idea that we could customize makeup for women. And, I think we can build the technology to figure out how to do that. And he sort of started like this, like not listening to a word we said. And about 5 to 15 minutes, he uncrossed his arms and he said, like, I don't think it's possible, but if you could do it, you could disrupt, if not change, the industry.
Yeah.
What?
And that felt just right to me. I was like, at that point, I was
Challenge
like,
accepted.
I was like, yeah, it's on. Like that moment, it was like the synapses from, I'm not really into makeup, and I don't think I could invest my energy, creative energy, into trying to do something like this. To like, we're doing this no matter what. And what we thought might take us a few months, like we met with a Russian scientist who had just done like a MRI analyzing software for Pfizer, or someone that was like, would analyze like millions of MRIs to find anomalies for doctors to figure out like brain tumors, things like crazy stuff. And he's like, yeah, we met this guy and told him about what we wanted to do under NDA and everything. And he said, yeah, I can do this for, $1.5 million. And we were kicking each other under the table like, dude, let's get out of here. Like we didn't have any money to do anything,
Are you meeting the VC under an NDA also?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah, VCs.
They don't care?
They have,
because you're telling them a potentially $1 billion idea.
There's so many ideas.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. There's a lot of people with a lot of ideas. Very few people that can execute an idea. And like we certainly didn't look like we were the people that could execute that idea.
Okay, but it seems like a VC has the contacts and just can pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, Jimmy, got an idea for you."
You're the perfect dude.
Yeah.
And we originally, just reached out to our friend Young, who was at Zazzle, and we said, hey, can you just tell us some people you might know who might be interested in coming in for equity and working on something like this. So we were thinking to give us like some junior engineer or something and say like, go spend your summer break working with these guys. And, over a period of time, he just got more and more interested in it, started taking it on as a side project. And he was beyond the right person to do it because he was an artist. He understood color. He had done all this virtual reality work. He just built this configurator, all the things that we kind of wanted to do, and we were like, oh my gosh, you want to help us with this? That's amazing. And he sort of just advised us over time of what to do and kind of things to do with it. And after a while we got it and we got it to work. I think it took us probably like 18 months or more.
Okay.
Maybe
it doesn't seem like a long time
almost 2 years to do it. It does when you're not working for anyone and you're scraping. I've had my share of ups and downs, and being an entrepreneur and being sort of like, living the startup life, I guess you would call it. It's like you do have that. You have this up and down kind of movement of getting to the next stage, And you were mentioning the VCs. It's like the VCs would just be like, no, we don't sign NDAs. Yeah. Because those are the guys with the checkbook, know. So
crazy.
And that's changing. There's always changes in the industry, technology industry, about who's actually investing, in different stages of investing. And I had such a great experience in learning all that stuff. I mean, we pitched well over 100 investors beforehand, and I got kind of lucky. Which I would say, it's not luck. It's the universe giving me exactly what I said I wanted.
Yes.
But we were living in Malibu, and I was working on a nonprofit, sort of sitting on the board of a nonprofit that was building soccer fields in Watts for like the kind of inner city schools of Watts. Oh. And the guy who was running it, an older gentleman, really, really nice guy, he's like, what are you doing other than this? And I said, you wouldn't believe it, but I'm making like a custom makeup company. And he's like, oh, have you ever heard of Kiehl's? And I was like, yeah, I've heard of Kiehl's. Like Kiehl's is actually, it's a skincare brand. It's like from the 80s and 90s and got really big and was acquired by L'Oreal. Oh, wow. And I was like, yeah, I remember that brand. I remember using it. And I think they're kind of an example of what we're doing, but they did it in skincare. Because they actually had like a live chemist blending, the right kind of tinctures and things for you in the back of their store in New York City. And long story short, he's like, that guy's also on the board, the guy that did that. So I met this guy and told him about what we did. And that was, coming into a new industry, not knowing anyone in the industry. I had to become credible in that industry, meet the superstars and the influencers of that industry, which were the makeup artists and the indie brands and stuff like that. And so meeting this family that did Kiehl's, this wonderful couple Klaus and Jamie Heidegger, and they basically schooled me on the industry and then introduced me to the right kind of, partners that I needed in order to grow it, like the PR agency and manufacturing and different things like that.
Damn.
So, and I also, again, like it's with Steve and Paul, I'm talking about I and me, but it was me with, my two partners that were doing that with me at the time.
Amazing. So you developed it, you came out with the app. Did you market test? Did you test it?
We tested it like crazy.
Yeah.
And another
Proof of concept
aha
type
moment
thing.
was
Yeah.
the first time we matched somebody with a product that, was a mixed race woman who said she never had, they don't make products that match me. So, I just sort of mixed things together and whatever. And we made this product for her. And like, she was almost in tears telling us like, this is amazing, And I sort of at that point realized we were doing something outside of just like, oh, we're solving a technical problem and then we're going to make a product.
People.
It was, the industry had been marketing what it could afford to bring to retail, which was, 5 to 30 colors of something, and saying, you're one of these colors. And if you're not, tough luck, and we were everything in that scale. So it was really cool.
Your app would tell from different products to mix together, or you guys were mixing how does that?
We actually brought in more and more folks, like as we started to take on seed capital and things like that. And brought in another guy that had no experience in beauty, who was just really passionate. He was a chemical and industrial engineer type of a guy. So he sort of had that cross between he could tweak machinery, but he could also, work with chemistry. And he came and sort of said, yeah, I'll work with you guys to do this. And we were literally like, I know you guys have a big studio here, but we were in a little room the size of this room.
Thank you
type
for
of
calling
thing.
this big.
It looks like it online, But we were in a room like this size with
Sure.
about 5 or 6 people sitting like this at a table, kind of just solving these problems on a daily basis, which is what startups are.
Yeah.
And then we, this guy came in, and I think the first time he came in to see us, he had mixed some stuff in a plastic bag. And like tried to mix his own, foundation. He didn't wear foundation,
Right.
His
Yeah.
wife, I think, probably did or
Supplied
something, but kind
the-
of said like, yes, that looks like it or something. But basically what we did is we ended up breaking the idea of the product into, colors that we could blend together in order to make any color.
Right.
And that took us a long time.
I
So we
bet.
built a technology on the, app side, and then also a product technology with machines that would blend this makeup,
That's
So
insane.
it was a vertical sort of an operation, which is,
Wow.
in a sense, kind of a no-no within the tech world. It's
Yeah.
like if you're going to build something that's just software,
Right.
or if you're in the CPG world, consumer products, you build a consumer product brand.
Right.
But we did both at the same time. And we kind of always in the back of our mind knew that we could get to a point of the higher rounds of funding and have optionality to maybe sell the company.
Yeah, which
So
you did.
Early on, we met with all the big brands in the industry who all wanted what we were doing, but we were kind of like, no, not yet type
Right.
of thing. And then we found this team at a company called Shiseido, which is based in New York and Tokyo, and just amazing team. And so we worked with them on doing an acquisition, and then
amazing.
ended up applying the technology to their products.
Wow.
What haven't you done?
Ah.
What do you
How-
want to do in the future?
How
Like,
can you help us?
Yeah.
Give me a few days to think about
Think-
it. No, I mean,
think about it, bro.
I do have this problem with sort of thinking. Anytime I'm talking to people, anytime I'm seeing things that I feel is interesting, thinking about what are the things that I could do to help
Right.
drive that forward.
Yeah.
Whether it's like, oh, I just have this idea for you, or like, man, I really like what you're doing.
Let me sleep on it.
Like
Think about it.
developers, a lot of times I'll meet those guys that are really, really engineer focused. And you can just see that they're so incredible at what they do. They could create almost anything. But then, beyond that, to actually bring it to market and monetize it and brand it and build the other things around it, which we all grew up in skateboarding. It's like part of being a skateboarder is like, even a
it's a
pro
whole thing.
skateboarder, the personal brand of a pro skateboarder is the same thing. You're building those things all the time.
I like when I meet those kind of people because I feel like they're complimentary to me. You know, like I'm good with putting the ideas together and putting the people together. So I'm always thinking about new things. I mean, I have ideas within the skateboard industry. I have ideas in other industries, and I'm kind of playing around with stuff. I've got this, you know, network of people that I've spent my life sort of being friends with or getting, you know, working together in different ways. And it seems like whenever I finish, I just left the Shiseido company in January. And I sort of took some time off, and I took my family to Costa Rica and took my son surfing, and you know, we went walking in the rainforest and just like cleared my head. And then I came back. By the time I was coming back, I was like, I got this idea, you know. I'm gonna start building something here, you know.
Man, you're always thinking.
And I feel like I've always told been together with my wife. I said now almost 14 years. I think when I first met her, I was like, I think I'm gonna retire. Like I'm just gonna like hang out. I want to surf. I just want to like chill.
You can't do that. No?
And then and at first she would sort of believe me, you know.
Yeah.
And then the next month we would be working on some project together or something. And she's always been there to not only support me, but you know, help me with ideas and things. It's the synergy is amazing there too. So it's like, you know, perfect
storm.
My
This is
perfect
like-
match.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Forrest Gump type story, you know, where like you invented all these things.
I know.
See, that's you remember when I told you about the book? It's like
Yeah.
I started to write down some of the things that happened when they wanted to publish this book. And at first it was, you know, let us publish 100 pages of your art. And I had these paintings and art shows I'd just done, and I was like, okay, I'll take some photos. And then as I was doing it, people around me that had known me for a while were like, you know that story about the, you know, you should tell that story, you know. And I started to write this stuff down, and I called the guys back, and I'm like, look, this is more like 300 pages, and it's like it's got everybody's story. It's not mine, you know. Like I've been saying I a lot in this thing, and everything I've ever done has been, you know, because I've been able to do it with the right kinds of people that have helped me do it.
Sure.
But you know, I'm grateful every day for that because the universe keeps serving me these people up.
Man,
you know?
you
So
keep
it's
that wavelength.
great.
You're on the wavelength.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah, man.
Yeah, it's
You have our number,
it's
so
a great life.
just call us if you.
well, now I know you.
How is it?
You're in trouble now.
Oh, I like it. How's my drawing coming along? Are you finished, or what's going on here, bro?
I think
Are you happy with it?
I think I could play with. Yeah, I'm always happy with it. It's fun to draw. You know?
Yeah,
Like
I can't draw.
I've
but
been blessed to be able to just be able to see something in my mind and draw it. And I think that
insane.
was the thing that became the way I started new things, projects, companies, brands, things like that. Was just like I'll, you know, wake up in the middle of the night and see it in my mind. And then I feel like I remember Picasso said something that was so inspiring to me throughout my life and still every day which is like whatever you can imagine is already real. You know, and like his art was that he would almost like barely paint the things that in some cases that he had imagined, you know what I mean? But I think for me, I sort of add to that, you know, the challenge is if you can manifest it in the physical world where other people can experience it, you know? Because the things that you see, like this drawing and the other stuff, it's like, you know, yeah, that's something I could put onto paper, but, you know, every day in my mind, I was like driving over here, writing rhymes, you know, like, you know, listening to the new hip hop that's out, you know, Tyler, the Creator, Coda the Friend, like, you know, things like that. I love hearing how I would call that the real hip hop, you know, like I would love how that stuff has evolved. It's like backpack hip hop from the 90s has come back around. We had a dark period in music for a while, but it's good to see that stuff. It's like creative and it's not bound by cultural boundaries or anything, you know.
Listen, bro.
You are incredible.
I know. I love it. I feel like you should be on Joe Rogan's podcast, not ours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
dude, I'm so grateful to be able to be on yours.
Oh,
It's like
we
I
appreciate
haven't
that, bro.
been able to, as I was talking to you, I'm always got things going on in my mind, but I haven't been able to spend a lot of time watching it. But after having this experience with you, I've seen some highlights along the way, and like Mike V, I watched a lot of his stuff and you know, listened to that and Tony's and stuff. And Tony's son, man, he's amazing.
He's great.
Like, I then went and watched him skate more because I kind of not followed it during that period when he was coming up, and I was like, dude, that guy's sick. How cool!
Great kid.
How cool! All these like, you know, old dudes still ripping, a lot of them, like Cab and his family and Tony and his family. It's just amazing to see how these guys have like brought skaters, a new generation even of skaters into this.
They birthed them.
They birthed them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally.
I mean, to see, you guys haven't had that experience yet, have you? Of
No,
kids,
I have a cat.
Yeah, you didn't birth the cat.
No, but it is my baby.
Yeah.
You know.
So you have the feeling of being attached to that being.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I mean, seeing my kids born and holding my son for the first time and like having my son touch me for the first time
can
and
imagine.
like he actually suckled my nose. it was like he was looking for looking for milk, you know, but I was holding him laying down and I looked at him and I couldn't even open his eyes and he just came to me and like I was just burst into tears. I mean, like the most intense experience to think like this being is the combination of you and me, you know.
How crazy.
We were thinking of his name and he's got a long name, but we were thinking of his name and it was just like truth.
Yeah.
You know, this is the truth.
Right.
And so, you know, that has to be his name. And truth didn't sound like the right name, so it became true. And then we didn't know we were going to be graced with love too, but when we got pregnant again with love, it was like she's got to be love, you know.
Wow.
Dude.
Yeah. But
Look at that, man. Huh?
and they are that every day. I mean, it's amazing to see them go from being that little tiny peanut to being like
crazy.
a person, you know. I want to play you my son's music. I have it on my phone.
Go, let's play it. Does it?
And
is
then I'll
it
bust a rhyme for you.
But okay. Oh, Kelly,
you keep saying okay, like Lil Jon's gonna come in and DJ.
I
this.
wish he would.
He's not.
Let's bring back the band
Yeah.
for this New Deal thing. Let's get Little John DJing, and you guys can do your play. Let's hear. Is it copywritten? Can we play it on the show and not get busted by?
There isn't any copyright because the teacher is amazing. He's got this teacher named Joe who basically just went to School of Rock as a kid. He's in his 20s now and is writing and producing his own music and stuff, and just super cool. It's like
crazy.
It's unbelievable. When I went to try to learn music, because as a kid I was like, I'm going to play
It's
guitar.
the hardest thing ever.
Sitting in front of that old dude who was going, "Bam, bam, 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 bam," I was like, no way. I'm leaving. I can't do this.
Right, right.
But my daughter just graduated from the first stage of the school, a few days ago, and like my son's doing the stuff he's doing. It's mind-boggling the opportunities these kids have nowadays.
What do we got here?
I told you I would outlast you
What do we
guys,
got?
didn't I?
I know.
Because I'm not even done. Like I can go all
You're
night.
Well, I wanted to ask something
Because
too.
it's like crazy to have an opportunity to actually share these things with you guys.
I don't know how you. I mean, I know you could go on and on, but I mean, I feel like I've learned so much in this couple hours, bro.
Thank you. I mean,
It's
I appreciate
fascinating.
it. I really do
Seriously.
appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me about
I've loved
this
every
crazy
minute
shit.
of it.
I was gonna ask about your new stuff with Supreme coming out.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been wearing this shirt the whole time. I haven't even said anything.
How did that come about?
I've known those guys. I wouldn't say I'm like close with them, but I've known them like across the room type of thing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
James Jebbia is one of the guys that's involved with that, and was early days. He had a shop that was called Union.
Yep.
That was really like one of the only kind of streetwear type of shops, and he carried New Deal, a beanie from New Deal in there. Then he carried a Messenger DJ bag that I made for Zero Sophisto in there. And so it was cool to have it come back around. Pang is like a big part of Supreme. He manages the Brooklyn store now, and he's like, he's a big part of it. And the creative guys are amazing over there. And they reached out to me and just said, hey, your name's been coming up for years over here, and we'd love to do something with you.
Sick.
That's rad.
Wow.
And I was just blown away. I was like, so psyched, because seeing how those guys have stayed so true to what they were doing, in the 90s,
Right.
turn it into a $1 billion,
insane.
entity, and then do the kinds of like collaborations and cross-pollination of the culture on their own terms with everybody out there in the world, and then kind of make people wait for it and drop it little bits at a time to them.
It's insane.
They've sort of redefined how people consume streetwear, you know what I mean? And so the fans and stuff, and cool for me. I think exposure to another group of people that are following the streetwear movement and that kind of thing. And you can't even call them streetwear. What is there a name for where they're at now?
Yeah. I don't know.
Fashion brand,
they
high
are
fashion
high
brand.
fashion.
They're in a league of their own.
Yeah, they really are.
So I mean, they were just
There's a knockoff store in fucking
super cool guys.
Shanghai now.
Is there?
Yeah, the full on it's called Supreme.
Oh, because maybe they don't have the license out there,
Yeah,
or
it's a
they're
fake
not.
Supreme.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, congrats on that. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, New Deal.
Yeah,
Supreme.
it was really cool, timely, because I had, before Douglas even reached out to me about New Deal, I was working on this thing with those guys.
Okay.
Oh, really?
And then Douglas reached out to me. I go, oh, crazy! These guys from Supreme just reached out to me to do this collab too. And they put me together with a few other artists, Salvador Dali, Jeff Koons, icons.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like amazing to even be associated with those guys. I think Dali, along with Dr. Seuss, Ted Geisel, were like they were the biggest inspirations to me as a kid. Like, you can do your art. Your art can look like anything you want it to,
Right.
and that's art,
Yeah.
And I loved Dr. Seuss's rhymes. You know what I mean? Like, I think that his rhymes, and my buddy Corey, who was a rapper back when we were in high school, tapping thumbs on the tables, was the things that kind of these are little bits that have molded me,
Sure.
into who I am.
It's amazing, bro. All right, we're gonna play this song. Here we go.
All right, and you're getting tired. I can tell I wore you out already.
No, bro.
Let me see if I can do this. First, let me just provide a little backdrop.
Go ahead.
So he went in and he did these shows where he learned Rolling Stone songs.
Oh, wow.
And then he sang like 8 Rolling Stone songs in his first concert at the Roxy. And it's not a Roxy concert; it's a daytime concert with the parents and families and friends and stuff.
Right.
But it's professionally lit and mic'd, and the
amazing.
music. They get the real experience of being up there.
cool.
And then he did it at the Troubadour with U2 songs. And then he said, "Papa, I think I want to quit." And I was like, "Dude, you're so good at singing. Like, please do not quit."
Yeah.
He's like, I just want to, you're doing this, you got like this hip hop stuff at home. You're doing I want to make my own music. I don't want to re-sing somebody else's songs. Like, I'm up on stage trying to act like, this guy from a long time ago. You know what I mean? I was like, dude, I love that you're saying that right now.
Seriously, yeah.
Like, let me ask your teachers if they can just do songwriting with you. Cause really, you should be doing that. And so
this is an original.
The teacher started singing.
This is an original song.
Yeah.
And
So
what is
this is
this-
the first time it's been broadcast too.
Okay.
So
What's it called?
it's called Mars.
Okay.
And think about it from an 12-year-old kid's, 11-year-old kid's perspective
Yeah.
of how he looks at the world, type of thing.
Can we give you some 9 Club stuff to take home? Maybe some
Yeah.
coffee mugs, a hoodie. What size do you?
I'm XL.
XL. Kelly, will you please do the honors and get him?
I'd be honored to. Yes.
Listen, while this is playing, I'm gonna draw you my little character, man.
Oh, please,
I'm gonna. This is what do they call this, man? This is I'm trying to get in this art show. You know what I'm saying?
You're on the team, man.
This is well, listen, wait till you see my art before you tell them to say that. Raj, get up and dance.
Do shit.
Woke up this morning, I heard the sound of cars. Whole world seems boring. Wish I could fly to Mars. So I built a spaceship, then I flew away. I like Mars a lot. They got Burger King.
She's never even been to it.
And the Martians ain't smart, they don't know anything.
that, huh?
Talented family.
You get an idea,
Talented,
man.
bro.
There's a
that's
few times I've been totally blown away by that kid.
Listen.
Besides that first day when he was a little peanut in my
course.
hand. But
Suckled your nose.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like I told him he's done this in a couple other songs now, and I said get like 3 or 4 songs, and I'll take you to Rainbow Records in L.A. and we'll watch them press a record
That'd
with
be
your
amazing.
music on it.
Wow.
And you can
Awesome.
draw. He's into manga, so that you can draw
Okay.
the cover and name it and stuff.
There you
It's like
go, man.
those kind of experiences that we can share. I can share with them.
Wow.
So
I love it, man.
just carry
amazing.
it forward.
Man, listen,
Crazy.
bro.
Let me see your drawing.
This is my character here.
Sweet.
This is,
Wow.
Is it
Yeah.
your New Deal shirt too?
I put that in to try to sweeten the pot a little bit. It's trying to get in this art show.
Nice, Chris.
Look at that. He's doing a manual.
Awesome.
See that?
That's awesome.
You want this?
Yeah,
I'll sign it.
please.
Yeah, seriously?
I mean, I'll take it now if you sign it.
Let me sign
Hey,
this for
there you
you.
go.
Let me sign. Maybe this can make it up on the wall somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it will.
It's not Switch. It's actually a regular manual. Should have made
Oh,
it
dude.
Switch.
Yeah,
I don't
you
know how
gotta
you
But
do
sign
that.
there you
Either.
go. Huh?
I don't know how it's able to do that.
What do you
I
mean?
don't either. Yeah.
The leverage
How
isn't there.
sick. Like the leverage is way out of
He's on
whack.
the front of the board.
And he's got that rad
skill.
like.
That's skills.
Wait, which is it a manual? Or
yeah,
a nose
manual. It's a manual.
Feet are not
should've
on
done
the
it.
tail.
I should have done it Switch manual, but it's all right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's as far as my art goes. What it says, Kelly, bro. It's not to laugh at, man. This is serious business.
Oh, dude, that's pretty funny.
It's pretty sick.
Should I make that a shirt?
Oh, we'll have to
Dude,
scan that in
please.
before you take that. Listen, dude. First of all, here's a 9 Club mug for your coffee. Do you drink coffee in the morning?
I do.
Here's some
Yeah.
coffee or your tea and some stickers.
Tea was to try to make my voice go, but I talked, but I never really
There
had
you
to
go.
bust out for you guys.
There you go. There's this. Here's a 9 Club XL T-shirt for you to wear,
Jeez, thank you, man.
and 9 Club hat. Are you a hat guy?
Maybe give it to his son or something.
Oh, there you go.
That sounds
Yeah, if
good.
your son
I
wears
wear hats
hats,
from time to time, for
or
There you go.
if it's
course I wear hats.
sunny out and you forget your shades, put that on.
Yeah.
And 9 Club embroidered.
I'll leave these
Crew
things with
neck.
you too, some stickers.
Oh, that's awesome, man! Thank you
Stickers
so
are worth
much.
1,000 words.
We can sell
Look
those on
at that.
eBay for like $1 million.
No, Supreme, and we got the Supreme balloon up here too.
Dude, that is
That thing's
so
sick.
tight. Hell yeah.
Listen,
Oh man, I'm so stoked. Thank you.
Andy Howell, it's been a pleasure.
We didn't even talk about the Enjoy collab you're doing too.
Oh shit.
Oh, are you?
Yeah,
Oh,
we did. Damn, thank you, because I would have caught so much. My email would have been like 1,000, lines long.
Douglas went off.
What's up, dude? What? No, that's one of the things that kind of sets it apart from the regular, reissue thing.
Okay.
So, also enjoys at Dwindle,
Yep.
and Louis, who's just an amazing guy, skater, creative,
Great,
just
great
awesome dude.
Yeah.
He really dug New Deal too back in the day. So we started talking to him about how could we do something together, and he's like, would you just do some art that sort of feels like the old art that you did, but do it for these guys now, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
And so for the pros, did an entire line for them. That's
Oh.
basically not kind of inspired by, sort of like the art show I was talking
Yeah.
about,
Mm-hmm.
inspired by the New Deal artwork, like the...
I've seen the series. It looks awesome.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you talk about it.
He just did.
That's it.
That's it for me. It will be on the wall.
No,
Yeah.
cool, yeah. I mean, it was great. I mean, he was really collaborative, really cool about it.
Yeah.
And Chris, who's the artist over there, like
Chris
worked
Bywater.
with us. Yeah, awesome dude.
Yep.
Worked together with him on it, and I did one that was the Susie Switchblade playing the pinball machine, which was one of Justin Gerard's graphics originally, but
Okay.
kind of trying to put a story into the pinball machine, which was really cool. So we did sort of like a white trash theme of a guy that was sort of a zombie with hair clippers shaving the head, of the skater,
Okay.
and then.
The Caswell's
Yes,
word.
Exactly, Caswell Berry was
Okay.
like it basically was I guess what happened? Did he never shave? He said I never shaved my head or something, but he
Yeah.
actually had a shaved head at the time or something. You know,
Yeah.
it was one of those kind of vibes, and I caught as much as I could from the
Sure.
way they described it, and then just sort of went off and drew that, and then Sergeant's monkey bomber holding a bong.
Okay.
And then Gorm did some stuff too for it. So I mean, there's a full collection. So
Wow.
it really is sort of like with the New Deal thing, getting this crew back together
Yeah.
and just sort of vibing. Yes, we've got to make the reissue board that's exactly the same thing, and creatively that's limited for us thinking of new ideas, but it's really important to the history of this thing because. Crazy the amount of money those boards go for on eBay and stuff, and there's not that many of them out there.
Right.
I've been trying to. I lost a bunch of boards probably 10 years ago. I had a storage unit with like original art, paintings, skateboards, like my collection of stuff I had done for New Deal. A lot of it. I still have a lot of it, but. I lost that when I just forgot to pay the thing over a
they
period of time,
auctioned
and
it
they
off.
auctioned it off,
Ugh.
and I started to see somebody called me and said, like, "Hey, dude, I was at the swap meet, and somebody had this entire thing of like all this original art of yours." By the time I traced back to who it was, the stuff was up on eBay, and it just landed in different people's collections and stuff around. But yeah, just we still have a lot of the original art. We still have I have the original drawings I did for the boards, for my boards back then. Paul had Ed's original graphic for the cat, like that, the one up there behind you. And then we redrew a bunch of stuff. So both for the New Deal and Enjoy. And I think the Enjoy thing will sort of give people a clue of like what could be done with this.
Yeah. There you go.
And I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that done yet, really, where it's been like, oh, we'll take this brand that's like kind of a relaunching or vintage brand, and we'll pull it together with a new brand in that way.
When
So
does
we had a good time.
the Enjoy thing come out?
I think all of it drops in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sick.
the art show we're doing for New Deal is the September 28th
Okay.
at Subliminal Gallery, and the stuff, as you've seen it, the stuff is out there, kind of floating around, and the distributors and everybody that we're working with to do stuff. So I think it'll get out there. I think people will see it, and
It's a cool series.
hopefully they dig it.
Sure. And check eBay. You might find some original artwork on there too.
Seriously, yeah, I was trying to find. I don't have the one of the Schmitt Stix models that I did with, like, I turned the board upside down, and I think it was a kid on an 8-ball or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have that one, and I was looking for it with collectors, and the guys are like, "You'll never get that, man.
Wow.
Like, there's only known to be like a few, 3 or 4 of them out there, and people who are selling them want like $8,000 to $12,000."
Oh, jeez.
I'm like, are you kidding me? No,
crazy is
that
that?
can't be. That can't be real. So I mean,
It's
with the
real.
New Deal boards, it's cool to be able to put out ones that are
Yeah.
accessible to
Yeah.
people now, but still with that artwork and everything. So
Are they silk screened?
there's 2 different
Is it
kinds.
heat transfer and silk screen?
Yeah, so we did a silk screen to try to do the most authentic original ones that we could, and those will only come out at the time when they drop. So the drop of the first collection of our first few boards that we had at the launch of New Deal, those will come out as screen print and also as heat transfer.
okay.
But after that, there will be no more screen print. So there's
Right.
a limited run of
Yeah,
screen
hold on to the
prints
screen print
each
ones.
time.
Yeah.
And that's so the collectors, we're not flooding the collectors, and we're actually giving them something that they can be
Something new.
stoked on too. Because
Yeah.
in a sense, they're sort of our team as well. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? They're helping carry this thing forward.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, we've got one collector, Chad Cooper, who's like a lot of his collection's gonna show at that Subliminal Gallery
Sick.
too.
All right.
He's got probably the biggest collection of New Deal stuff that I've seen.
Wow, I can't wait to see
Yeah, it's
my
a trip to
photo
have
up on the
have
wall
other
there.
people collecting that stuff to the further than the extent of me or other
Yeah.
guys that are were in it at the beginning. So it's cool to see that it had that kind of an impact.
It's great,
It's rad.
man. It's great. Listen, congratulations on everything.
Yes.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Thanks, don't
You
stop.
got a talented family there. You're talented.
Thank you.
I mean,
You're
Jesus.
talented
I
as well,
appreciate
Chris.
that so
Thank
much,
you,
man.
bro. I'm talented.
You're talented,
too.
yeah.
Thank you.
Magic man.
I know
dude.
I said this 10 times, but like what you guys are doing is so important to this
Oh, appreciate
world,
Appreciate
to this world of skateboarding, because
Yeah.
as it expands and it has multiple generations on top of each other, not to have the history and not to have the stories that people can reflect on.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking earlier about kind of the time, you know, in high school. In high school, I identified myself as a punk kid who listened to punk music and skated.
Right.
And like nothing else mattered. You know, I didn't even listen to the other music at the time. Of course, I listened to Devo and Kraftwerk and all those kind of things. But like the things that were the mainstream were just off limits.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then later I came back and I discovered, you know, jazz and, you know, all these other kinds of music, you know, down to bluegrass and all that stuff. And I feel like skating has those textures and layers of almost different genres and generations of skating from, you know, now from the 60s and then, you know, the Dogtown guys all the way to, you know, the guys today that are just pushing it to a whole different level, you know. I mean, it's amazing to see. It's amazing. I kind of had this thought the other day. Tell me what you think about this. That Tony Hawk Pro Skater, the video game. You remember how surreal it felt to do like, you know, quadruple flip whatever's up in space and stuff. I feel like people are actually doing those tricks on skateboards now. You know, and like multiple, you know, versions of the thing into it. And I think in some, you know, there was a time when I thought, you know, jumping off a Dempsey dumpster, bomb dropping onto my skateboard on the street was like the best thing in the world. That it would never get any better, any crazier than that, you know. And then, you know, Jamie Thomas and Tony jumping, you know, or Danny jumping over the Great Wall of China and Tony doing, you know, 900s, you know, things just kept going. And now you have this new generation that just standing on the shoulders of the guys right before them start the first day at 90% of where it took people their whole life to get to, and then just go again. But I keep wondering, like, does it ever, you know, does it ever stop? Like, when is it humanly too much for the human body to go further?
Hopefully, we'll never find out.
The kids nowadays, though, are that are the hot ones nowadays, doing all the shit you're talking about, are going to be saying later on
the same stuff.
Look at this shit that these people are doing. Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
That's, I think, the magic of skateboarding that is just unbelievable to see, you know, like being like an old, you know, codger in this world and looking at it over 30, 40 years, you know, it's just insane to see.
Crazy
to see that going on.
Well, listen, man, we'll see you at the art show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will you guys come to it?
Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah, dude.
Awesome.
When is it?
It's September 28th is the launch event, but I'm sure that the show's going to run for a month after that. So if you get there and it's like shoulder to shoulder and you can't see what's going on, then you can come back and see it.
Cool.
I'm so excited to see what some of these artists do with, like,
it's gonna be
you know,
great.
with this stuff. Like Stevie sent me a little sketch of the thing he was working on. I was like, dude, that's sick. You know, stoked to see it. It's really, for me, it just touches me so deeply to know that, like, those guys are like, yeah, dude, I'll do that. You know, I'll do an art show like about that stuff you guys did a long time ago.
That's
you know,
sick,
man.
So it's cool. Eli Gessner, I didn't mention in that, but he's also one of the artists that's going to be in the show. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Man.
So I can't remember everybody right now.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it'll start to come
trickle
out. It'll start to come out.
Yeah. It's amazing, bro.
Yeah.
Listen, bro. Andy.
Good to,
you know what I'm saying?
Connect with you guys.
Of course, man. Thank you, dude. Thank you so much for coming by and dropping all this knowledge on us. You know, it's fucking, it's fascinating. I had a great time.
Me too.
I had a great time.
Are you gonna download the makeup app?
I don't. Should I?
Yes.
I don't know.
We all should.
Raj,
do it. Do it and tell me what you think.
Yeah, Raj, you need to.
I think Raj would look good in some makeup.
Yeah.
I'm wearing makeup right now.
I did something else that I'd love to play if you guys don't mind. I know you guys don't do this.
No,
but
what is it?
It's worth listening to. It's a piece of prose that I wrote because I wrote this with my friends in North Carolina. I have a Black Sheep skate shop. I did a little collab with them with a painting I did and stuff, and those guys are amazing. We just really kind of collaborated on it. We made like a little AR experience with a board graphic where you could like put the app over top and you could see all these different you click in and see like all video parts and hear Mass Prophet songs and things like that. And so I wrote this piece of prose because I was like, how do I really encapsulate this kind of stuff we've been talking about? And we've like scratched on some stuff, but not really hit everything into a piece of prose. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to do that, but I want to have, you know, I'm in this tech phase of my life right now. I want to have a computer voice sing it back.
Yeah.
You know? So I basically put it into a
So this is another song you're going to play, or
I
is
wouldn't
this,
call it a song because
oh.
there's no beats or anything, but
Okay.
this will cover a lot of my homies too. That I haven't been able to give shouts out to people around, especially on the East Coast, that like are the reason that I am who I am today in a lot of ways, especially the early days of inspiration and everything for me. So let's see if this will actually play and see if I can get this to work.
Hey, good point, prankster, disco gangster, ghost in the machine, obscene, spark Molotov mind dreams and photocopied SK8 zines, Howell LLLLA, hell, file name, Andy Howell. This interactive SK8 board model and punk-ass playlist collaboration with my friends at Black Sheep NC will transport you down the clackety-clack sidewalk surfing fluid motion mind of a mixed media madman. Never second guess, DJ special guest will light up my tracks, so kick back. Let me tell you about the 99 live as in 43,000 crimes of H1 or aka H-Bomb 43, also known as MC Victory Cat, also known as 43-bit. Andy Howell was born a moderately privileged suburban punk with a penchant for art and extremely mischievous tendencies. From Atlantic to Pacific, dirty South to SoCal, from Sick and Atcher to the Wall Street Journal, from useless wooden toys to Wired magazine, making the scene in assorted flavors and unlimited shades. Outer Banks Kitty Hawk Kid to the back alleys of Bangkok. Bad brains devote to graph trains we flow, innovate, collaborate from the giddy, punk, graph, SK8 boarding, New Deal, Element, 411, Skate TV, Trans World, Power Edge, and Thrasher, Nose Blunt Disaster, Switch Stance Master, Hacker Slacker. My whole element part writing backwards, grifter, style shifter, from walls to paper to decks and stickers to the underground thousands, random rhymer, all-star 10-timer, mass profits, rowdy, mo wax before it was a thing, still in the ring. Rap or sing, post bling, true in love, the seventh wave, at the ground floor sub-basement of a new generation of commercialized fine artists, global bachelor degree in debauchery, juxtaposed generation alumni in the back of the bus in a tie. Undercover brother, streetwear player slayer from fluid motion to big deals in Sophisto, Image works with Triple GGG brand game Activision, launched Cyan, Holy Mount Zion, Fingerboard MacD's Happy Meal top 10 of all time 80 million units, pop. Up collections and brands and boutiques and big box, A-listed before the term pop-up existed, technologistic, husband to a sweet earth mama, punk rock Peter Pan, Renaissance family man, proud papa father founder, depth charge sounder. From my desktop PC to Fly MC to my M3 to MP3 to SMT to Mac SE to late stage VC, to just me, sublime MC victory behind enemy lines, already lived 9 times I be a black cat M80 MC producer cold press juicer, best dressed alchemist. Holistic path from pro writer, to founder, to industry insider, to video media maker, to design firm, to branding agency, to museum retrospective, to creator objective, to brand incubator, player hater, wall jam annihilator, to online community curator, to custom beauty creator, etc., and so on. Limited edition of one, we've only just begun. Backyard VB ramp scene, we built our own dreams, before it was DIY, imagine and try, my world on one wheel down Barney's concrete curl to wall slide high five and Addison Tommy at the Carson Velodrome, to AI apps on yo mama's iPhone. My MO is to rip Verdun Street, keep it net with prep school suites and skinny ties, stay in high and fly, Virginia Beach pool service, Ron's ramp jam, shout out to OG partners and SK8 crimes, good times, bail buckets and rhymes. Hey, good point and Aragona, Otha Thomas Nolan, DJ Brian Zentz represent, Darren, Brad Marks, Gidroll brought the blues, Prince Korsky introduced me to hip-hop pushing limits with pen and paper, backyard ramp capers. With my ship of fools after middle school,
Charles
before
Harmon.
the street lights came on, school night, stage fright, Alan Midget, same way same day in front of the front foot, jump ramp ollie catches, Bush Cotton Charles Harmon hell-bent trip. In the Wagoneer from there to here rocking Fuzzbusters with the VB crew to Wrightsville Beach. Surf City. Roy Turner and Bailey Webb, Shannon, Lori and the Six Pack, and all the NC Southern Belles past, present, and future. Fluid motion suckatus. It's a rainy night in Georgia. Reggie Barnes put me on when Tim P. Santa Cruz went empty. At the Raleigh contest, Lone Justice, Farm Ramp Posse, y'all crazy roughneck rednecks representin'. Peace to my peeps back east New York down to ATL, age 15, Allentown PA, Vert Posse Jeff Graham, the Charnoskis, Geek Attack, Graholski. Chalk trees laid back, on tracks, to my boys in ATL, my brother from another mother Mike Higgins, with a gaggle of fraggles flow adding in bumble tubs down the Chattahoochee, Base 1 and Kinsey, Persky and his Huskies, Fred Reeves, Don Hillsman. Tommy K and the Rancheros, T. Thomas to Taylor, Billy Davis, Brian Chung, Keen Wan, Jezen Sen, Dallas Austin, Juan, Ruckus, and the Roddy Posse, gone around the world from ATL to India, Mountain Gorillas in Rwanda to Uluwatu, Bali. Burning Man to the Osa, Yearning Man, to my OG Mass Prophets, Lil Jon, D Money, Dushan W. Atkins DJ Sleepy D Supreme Relaxed in a Dream, M at B the Child Prodigy, Jason, Shilly Vanilli Stealing Rhymes and Brands. H2O and Buck from Y'all So Stupid going 85 South, in Tokyo with Guru and Premier at a time when camaraderie was the norm. Premier Brainstorm, when I called he showed me how to sample single beats to make my own drum set, never forget. Gene Krupa Big Band Suites, collabs with my favorite artists in the streets, Keith Haring, Angry Wobots, Kinsey, Zero, Jose, Persway, on Melrose for a day up on my billboard for DC shoes, Art for Obama with G, put some South in your mouth. Art school girls far flung from VA to ATL, Munster to Savannah Slamma, came out like a bad mama jamma, wall jams to Noli to Fake E in 88 with Neil Blender, just so happens, sent Hawk his first fan letter when we were 15. He told
I
me
could've played this
15
at the
years
beginning.
later
Yeah, I
making
think
the
it's your
scene
intro
with
right here.
Sick and Atcher, and Mark Gonzalez
This is your whole
I
interview.
won't
Yeah.
forget. Living in a box in Marty's living room in 85. Taught me real street
get to tell
SK
Mark
adding
Gon's
HB, Ollie
story, man.
sliders. At the first Savannah Slamma I missed my shot. With Seismo, to get on Powell, cause I was holed up in a dream behind a Coke machine. But better yet, I made a better bet, with Schmitt and Douglas we made New Deal first class. I did the logo with crayons cause we kids just playin', so WHSAN, Giant D, UE, and all the brands in between, with Ed Templeton, Justin Gerard. Jose Gomez, Gorm Boberg, Josh Friedberg, Hazy and the Sleaze, we shook the streets and pushed the industry forward with ease. First a National Bank of Reality, Pepe Martinez, put Stevie Williams on when he was still Lil Stevie. First sponsor Jamie Thomas on Zero Sophisto, the name stuck like a fake Eoli frontside air nose pick front truck. Indiad, Chris Hall Part 2, Newzoo Review, SK adding ATL in the wee hours of the AM walls I slay M, skills display M, kids sneakin'. Cans leakin', all the girls freakin', props to Jeremy, Eli G, Barker B, Rodney, and Bruno for holding it down up north, while I was in the rowdy fort with Busta, Puff, and Too Short, watchin' Eric Sermon recording solo rhymes, big dogs big time. I'm squirmin', just watchin' and learnin', writing graffiti and rhymes, at the beginning of the dirty, picked Lil Jon up at his mom's, bring your tables, bro, I got mics and cables, though. Mics and cables, though, Simp T, Cordy, yeah heard me, 8 tracks and blondes, stacks of children's records to sample, my urbanistics crew is ample, Shep came back through around 92, sent AG stickers and prints from his spot in Providence. ATL clubs and crazies, should be pushing up daisies, more than once, cap crew hitting stunts, dripping walls, flip phone car calls and backyard pools during Freaknik. Filming with friends, blending gems and bending rhythms, doing Ren and then Freedom, video with Ted Newsom, out in SF with TG and Jimmy T on Diviz and Turk, Eddie's Soul Food, Funky Time? Funky Time, in the covered wagon listening to MCM and the Monster, I said jump, drunk and twisted, almost missed it all, if I hadn't made that phone call, back in art school, cool fool as a rule, like Victor Moscoso, M to Proso. Now I'm skypaging with famous friends, Golden G8 Park after dark, found my thrill, backside 9th Hill, watching Julian defy danger. London, Paris, Lisbon, Lausanne, Berlin, Amsterdam, Tokyo, to Hong Kong in a movie with Jackie Chan. In every city, every land, band in DC. Oi, thank God I'm a country boy. Understand, we are all in this one together. So many more stories to tell. Pull the lever, watch the video, in the back of the Phoenix or I'm at a Palo. Bro, I mean it, we been there, we seen it. Met my ginger, my girl in the Hard Rock, Vegas baby, and married down under in the Medusa. Old souls playin' in a visual language without words. Love at first sight is absurd and real. My monster kids in Sydney know the deal. Kino, Kunaya. With Luca, like-minded, love-blinded, unbinded, unhinged, on a spiritualized binge. Now we out in Cali, Calabasas, out in the bayou, surfing, making love, got things to do, I'm free, MCH Bomb 43, don't filter me. Stop sorting me, cohorting me, distorting me, recording me, do you sorta see? I commune with nature, mama nature, wah, yeah, I need, jingda. I see my boy, true, surfing, the circle is complete. First he's dropping in, stopping then to pedicel, for real, making his own beats on GarageBand. So killa you know the dilla, my tiny perfect, love bug, keep it real. Collecting seed banks and guitar licks, after schoolin', tide poolin', I feel the fluid motion of the ocean, locked in, slotted, almost forgot it but I said it, we are all connected. TV preachers couldn't teach us, monkey wrenchin' with my system, they should listen to kids speaking science through speaker systems. I dissed 'em, dismissed 'em, punked 'em, dissect 'em, kicked 'em and direct 'em, just a victim. I inject 'em, with a serum that I'm sellin', cerebellums keep a swellin', fellas yellin' when I tell 'em, scare 'em, WH it I sold 'em wasn't serum, it was science, vocal Pied Piper. Inspect my tech, then, detect my dialectic, cause it's hectic, yes, I wrecked it, ish, it, TTTTTT 407310900
Wow.
Is that it?
I can play another one.